this might not be an ideal situation for a tanky, but we'll see how they'll try to justify it. Anyway, Destiny?
Have remained virtually unchanged since the beginning of the war. Russia doesn't really have any good reason to go after Ukraine. Russia has continued to threaten Ukraine's sovereignty in a way that we haven't seen any nation threaten the sovereignty of any other nation in the past 30 years. The idea that the territorial integrity of another country could be threatened by a larger power because of fears of the type of government they'll have, or the potential voluntary joining of NATO, or the potential voluntary joining of open markets in Europe a few months ago when the war began. We've seen Russia commit to atrocious military strategy, whether we're talking about civilians being murdered in places like Mariupol, or whether we're talking about the, I guess, just the overall mayhem or destruction that they brought in cities that they've been forced to retreat from now. There's any justification that could revolve around trying to say that Russia should be able to do anything undermines Ukraine's sovereignty. That hasn't changed since the beginning of the war. And unfortunately, now Russia finds itself in the bad end of a protracted war that it doesn't seem to be able to support. And yeah, I'm curious to see if we have any new arguments that could possibly justify the failing Russian invasion into Ukraine.
Oh, yeah.
You got it. Thank you very much. We'll kick it over to Jackson and Infrared, but want to say, folks, if it's your first time here at Modern Day Debate, we're a neutral channel hosting debates on science, religion, and politics. We hope you feel welcome no matter what walk of life you are from, and we have many more juicy upcoming debates. A controversial one next week. Vosh and Dr. Trans women are women. You don't want to miss it, as well as many other debates. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss it. And with that, thanks so much, Jackson and Infrared. The floor is all yours for your openings as well.
Very happy
to
that
interrupt like that.
Ezov Something and Destiny have joined us for a debate today, because last time they bitched out and refused to debate us, and I feel like they probably collected, so it's good that they're here.
Well said, Jackson.
Before we get into it, though, and I hope Ezov Something can respond to this, you've gone out and you've posted memes of Stefan Bandera, the infamous Nazi in Ukraine. You've been criticized by your own audience for doing this. You said that you defended the Azov battalion because what else is Ukraine supposed to do than to support the Azov Nazis and bring them into their National Guard ranks and allow them to basically slaughter and genocide people in the Donbass for 8 years. So the Azov Nazis and posting Bandera memes online. But as we get into this, I mean, obviously, the war, this special military operation, invasion, whatever party wants to call it, began due to Western escalation. We saw the continued threat of NATO accession of Ukraine leading up, well, even up until the last days prior to this invasion beginning. We saw the West and nations that previously were neutral flooding Ukraine with arms. We've seen NATO training Ukrainian battalions. We've seen the U.S. training special op Ukrainian forces in the United States. And we also saw that the Ukrainians were planning an offensive, an invasion into the Donbass. We know for the past 8 years, Putin has tried to secure peace in Ukraine through the Minsk Accords and the Minsk II Accords, both of which were forces. The ceasefire violations were violated. Especially in the days leading up to the war, we saw an dramatic increase in ceasefire violations. And though the OSCE does not directly point out who is responsible for these violations, Donetsk officials say that Ukraine was responsible for the vast majority of these violations in the final days of the war. But then again, this isn't nearly as important as the fact that there were documents released, I believe it was on March 8th, which pointed out that Ukraine's National Guard was planning an invasion into the Joint Forces Operation Zone in the Donbass. They were going to do a full-scale invasion. And in an effort to prevent NATO accession on Russia's border, in an effort to prevent the slaughter of more Donbass civilians in Donetsk and Lugansk with this threat of an invasion, and to prevent the Nazis like the Azovs that you, Azov Something, have defended from killing more civilians and spreading their ideology, Russia decided to make a counter move to the 8-year war, which was started after a U.S. coup in 2014 in Ukraine by launching this special military operation.
Additionally, in regards to this allegation by Adam Soithing that we had backed out of our debate, if anyone's interested, we don't actually have to argue about it. You can go on my channel where I provide irrefutable proof that at the very least, Adam Soithing was lying. That me and Jack, there's a full, I show the full DMs with Modern Day Debate, and I provide evidence from Modern Day Debate's Twitter that says it was actually him that backed out of that. But let's not dwell too much on that. Just right to add to what Jackson said with the kind of broader picture, this notion that what we're witnessing is this time-old Russian imperialism. The notion that the Soviets is already questionable, but the Soviet Union doesn't even exist anymore. Although Russia has inherited the Soviet Union as a state, there can be no question of Russian imperialism without an international system of equal sovereign nations. Now, the international system that has resulted from the architects of the Bretton Woods system after World War II, I don't even think the two gentlemen here will try and make the argument that that system has resulted in free and equal sovereignty. The United States has an exceptional status in that international system, and it had sought, after the fall of the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc, to integrate not only countries of the Warsaw Pact, but also the former Soviet Union into that international system. And it has been Russia's resistance to being integrated into that international system in the Western aggression that led up to the events in Ukraine today. So I think I'll just leave it there for now.
Sorry. You got it. We'll jump into open conversation. Want to let you know, folks, 100% of today's Super Chats are going to go to the Domestic Violence Action Center. So this is an organization with a great charity watchdog rating, save funds for what they say they are, which is helping abuse, or I should say, people who have been abused or people who are coming out of domestic violence situations. And so highly encourage you, hey, send in a super chat, as you can both ask a question for the Q&A, and it's going to a good cause, 100% of it. So with that, thanks very much. Gentlemen, the floor is all yours for open conversation. I want to remind you, if it gets too unyieldy, if it gets too wild, I do have to mute you. And here we go. 3, 2, 1, go.
Just a quick point as we start. I have this email in front of me that I got from James on the 2nd of March. This is with regards to who pitched out of the debate. He wrote, "Hi Adam, I'm bummed that Jackson, Hinkle, and Infrared aren't going for it despite my best efforts to persuade them. However, I'm not exaggerating when I say I might have a better idea of Russia." And then we got the justice debate. So here, James on the 2nd of March wrote to me that Hinkle and Infrared aren't going for it despite him trying to convince them otherwise. You can ask James about it after the debate if you want. This email, I got this from the Modern Day Debate. So this is the only way to interpret this, is that you guys have backed out. This is on my Discord.
English is not your first language, obviously, bro.
So feel free to check it out for yourself. Otherwise, I can see that this debate is going to be pretty much
it's not my first language.
It's essentially disinfo and misrepresentation, etc. And just bad faith, Gishkel of gaslighting, the usual. That's Jackson's MO mostly. Infrared just screams a lot. But
were you not posting photos of Stefan Bandera?
Yes, which was actually a spin on this Stefan Bandera. If you know European history, you know that. Yes, I know it's funny. It's funny to it's only funny because you're a bit ignorant on this.
Well, your own audience called you out about that. That's just why I brought it up.
Some people found it weird, which I fully understand. But the thing to understand here is that. That image I interpreted as essentially a version to Stepan Bandera, ooh, look at ooh, the Bandera, that kind of thing. The second thing,
I don't really. And in fact, you said that Bandera and you said Azov were far right. Would you be willing to say here live that they are not just far right, but they're Nazis? Can we get that on the record?
Some of them are definitely Nazis.
Well, hold on. To be clear, on the record right now, the Azov Battalion is not the same Azov Battalion that it was pre-2014. The Azov Battalion has been properly assumed in the Ukrainian forces, and the idea that the majority of these people, even a sizable chunk of them, are
did they assimilate the Nazi swastikas on their arms too?
Really? You don't think that the SS? Destiny. You don't think that the SS?
Do you have any source on that actually?
You don't think that the SS Wolfsengel?
Oh wait, let's check
that the SS Wolfsengel symbol on their actual uniforms is a symbol of their ideology, that they are Nazis, or the Black Sun logo that is a Nazi symbol?
Yep. Okay. So my response to this is that when I'm trying to figure out what's happening in terms of foreign affairs, I'm not looking at pictures that people post on Facebook and Twitter.
What an asshole.
There is a
God
right.
damn,
So we're gonna say
dude.
like there's a significant Nazi or far right.
How do you argue with someone like that?
In Ukraine,
You know,
What I'd be
this is why I hate
interested in is that,
debates.
like, are there an acts?
Yeah,
of
that's
people
not
like
a valid
anti-Semitic? Do we have,
source.
like,
I'm not
crystal
getting
map
my
going on?
information
Do we
from
have people
Facebook
that are
memes.
encouraging a lot of anti-Semitic or hateful behavior towards Jewish people in
We
Ukraine?
do.
I don't see that anywhere.
We do.
There aren't really widespread reports of that. Polling data in Ukraine shows that like they're not anti-Semitic, in arguably the least anti-Semitic country in I think in all of Europe. I don't even think it's Eastern Europe. So yeah, I'm not really as convinced about pictures of people with dumb fucking symbols and shit on the military uniforms. I'm sure there are probably some Nazis in the Ukrainian.
Well, I mean,
military.
it's their
I'm
official
sure
symbol.
Let me just.
It's their official
I'm
symbol.
sure that- I'm
You're
sure
making
that
like a
I'm-
smaller
Let's
thing.
give Steven 20 seconds to finish, and then we'll
Sure,
come
I'm
over
sure
to
there
you.
are far right aspects to literally every single military in the world. But if you cared as much about this, why don't you ever talk about like the Wagner Group?
He
Why don't
muted
you ever talk
Jackson.
about any
You
of
can
the
see it in the
far-right
bottom
elements
right
that exist in
corner.
Russia that literally train foreign fighters that like do operations for far right causes in other countries, like in Sweden.
Well,
yeah.
The Wagner Group doesn't have any official ties to the Russian government, but regardless, I just wanted
Of
to
course
ask,
not. Oh, God.
are you trying to suggest that it's not possible for there to be neo-Nazis, active neo-Nazis, I should add, if there aren't
Maybe he's not
anti-Jewish
muted.
pogroms going on? Because I'll have you know that the biggest victims of Nazi violence during World War II were Slavs, and Russian Slavs in particular. So I'm not sure where this idea that Nazis have to engage in anti-Semitic violence. I mean, it's clear they do have anti-Semitic views, that's well documented, but I don't see why that has to be a key criteria. Now, regarding the Wagner Group, even if you want to say that the Russian government has these under-the-cover ties, I mean, that is vastly different than integrating literal neo-Nazi groups into your official military, as Ukraine has done for their National Guard. So I don't really see the comparison. I mean, you could say that Russia's doing some under-the-rug shady shit. If you're going to try an argument, there's no evidence of that. But even if that was true, it wouldn't be the same as the way in which Ukraine has literally integrated these people into its official.
Hey, Ren Ben, what's up, buddy?
Yeah, so I mean, the difference is that like the Wagner Group still operates as the arm, as the paramilitary arm of the Russian military.
That's
They
the key
still-
word, though,
when they're-
paramilitary.
Thanks, bro. Glad you're here watching.
What does
today.
that?
Sanctions, state supported. State
What does
control.
that mean to you? What do you
They're a
mean?
private
Like,
mercenary group.
they're private mercenaries that work at the behest of the Kremlin. They are.
Where's your
directly-
evidence of that?
Like,
Wait,
wait, are we having this debate? Wait, is that a debate we're
Yeah.
having right now? That the Wagner Group is just some independent operating thing that doesn't have any ties to
Oh,
Russia
yeah,
at
which-
all?
which
Is that where we're
always-
at?
Well, you're
It's
trying to
always
make a
something to show, like,
comparison
Russia
to
versus
a.
Azov.
And by the way, we all know it's not just the Azov battalion. Of course, Azov is probably the most given the most spectacle and attention because they are so out in the open with regard to the fact that they do have these Nazi symbols as their official logos. But I mean, you look at all these other groups. You look at Trident. You look at is it the C-14? You look at all these groups that are responsible for these mass atrocities, and they are the ideological and Bandera, who again, Adam something here seems to think is a guy worth making memes about and posting about on his YouTube page. But what I will say
Right.
is
It's
that
a business.
At the end
War
of the
is a
day,
racket.
The
We
people
know.
who started these
Everyone on this
groups,
show, we
started
all
these
agree.
parties, started this mass political movement in Ukraine to carry out the ideological ambitions.
This
of
guy
Nazi
right here
collaborators like
and the guy in the
Stefan
top
Bandera.
right,
They say things like,
they're
"We want to
cheering
rid
on this
Ukraine-
war."
Rid
This guy
non-Ukrainians
and
out of
Jackson
Ukraine. We want to get Russians
are
and Jews out of
anti-war,
Ukraine."
and they
That was
want the war to
Ilya
stop.
Book. We saw
And they just- they
Andriy
basically just
Parubi,
relay the
or Andriy
facts.
Belitsky, rather. He was the commander of the Azov battalion. That he wanted to he professed his support. Listen, he wanted to profess his support for a crusade of white nations against Semitic-led subhumans. So when they're killing 14,000 people in the Donbass, do you not think that that is the true actions of Nazis? That is them carrying out their ideological ambitions?
No, it's a civil war within the country. You don't see them like
Against ethnic Russians.
against people
No.
that are being supported by Russia breaking away from their country.
Why are they
And if
being
you wanna
supported by Russia?
Because to undermine the sovereignty of Ukraine, and they've been trying to do so ever
Well-
since 2014 when their guy got ousted from the government.
Wow.
Yeah, I
Before we
mean,
get
from
into
Russia's
that-
part, it's simple blood and soil, essentially. And
So I'd like to ask-
Has one sec, please. Quick question for you. We keep hearing about this. We keep hearing about this massive Nazi problem in Ukraine, right? Like, of course, citation needed, but also, guys, don't you find it funny how like your position is held by virtually every neo-Nazi movement in Europe right now? Like in Hungary, there's a literal Nazi party in parliament right now, Our Homeland it's called, who are just spreading the same kind of propaganda that you do. They say the exact same thing. Fidesz, Viktor Orban's party.
It has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Cash party also believes the same thing. And every single far-right party in Europe, every single
Is
party
Orban's
is
party right now
outright-
genociding ethnic Russians?
Exactly. Thank you, Jackson.
Excuse me. Like,
There is no genocide in Ukraine. What are you
What?
talking about?
Well, I just wanted to first of all, Adam,
Russia is genociding more ethnic Russians right now than anyone else.
Adam, I think you're
That's
wrong about
factually
that.
incorrect.
So
Yeah,
Adam, it is-
they're bombing ethnic Russian areas. Ethnic Russian casualties are mounting in well, one sec, Haz. And ethnic Russian civilian casualties are mounting in the areas that Russia is attacking. Russia
So
is
you think that
Eastern
none of those ethnic Russian deaths could have been responsible by the Ukrainian forces like they were over the past 8 years?
So now we switch to like, don't you think some of them might have been killed by Ukraine? Come on, dude.
To the question, I asked you a question. You're making it out to be that all ethnic Russians killed are a result of Russian airstrikes or something like that.
Of course, not 100%.
Okay, well, good. Now we can find a point.
Okay,
between
now
them.
we just found
Do
out
you
that your
think
point
that
has
there
no
are more
weight. It
ethnic
was a piece of
Russians?
straw,
Do you think that there are
and
more
it
ethnic Russians
has
that
no
are
meaning
killed
or
right
bearing
now
on this conversation.
compared to the past 8 years?
Boom.
Most ethnic Russians in Ukraine are anti-Russian, or anti-Russian military and anti-invasion.
Before we get
So,
into that,
how does that happen? You know?
You said the majority of neo-Nazis are pro-Russia, which isn't true. It's just that the majority
European, absolutely, dude.
not true.
Look at their policies.
How do you
Look at
know how
the
people are? It's so crazy how this guy claims to know. This guy's just all
They're
bullshit.
not neo-Nazis.
National-
Oh yeah, the majority. Oh, I did this poll and a study, and I know how they
Not the
feel.
same thing.
And I know what Abraham Lincoln. I know why Abraham Lincoln started the Civil War.
I live in East Germany right now.
You'd
I
probably
live
call
here,
Trump a
it's
Nazi
super
too.
Yeah. But
No,
anyway,
Trump is not a Nazi. He's just like a.
But I wanted to ask you the question.
I think Marjorie Taylor Greene and Boebert and people like that. I think they're like kind of proto Nazis. Like
well,
I mean, what
I'm
an issue with
interested in your notion of Nazism when you consider Stepan Bandera not a Nazi but
No,
conservative.
Stepan Bandera had a complicated.
Yeah,
history. He was a
mainstream media
Nazi
kept pushing it.
collaborator.
Ben Kanan, do you want to know
I don't think
what
he
my
was
big
like
clue
around
this
Nazi
war was one big lie?
warlord.
You know what he said about?
I watched Jackson Hinkle, and I've watched him for a long time. And
Oh,
he
sure.
was on this when it
But
first
here's the
started.
thing,
So,
though, like, back
And
in
I
the
knew
days,
what was going
conservatives
on.
in America are not.
Wait, hold on. Are you going to
Because
let
I
him
watch
finish? You're
him.
just going to keep like rapid fire
Yeah, yeah,
questions.
I didn't need to wait for
Go
mainstream
ahead,
media
yeah.
to come
So
around, you
I
know?
would just love to know
so back during the
Oz,
day,
I do want to
sure.
let him finish.
So about Bandera, I think it's very important to note the historical
mainstream media
context.
still
Back in
hasn't
the
come
day,
around yet.
At that point, the Soviet Union was doing something similar to Ukraine that it's doing now, and at that point, from the West and the Ukrainians, of course, were resisting the Soviet invasion, and the Nazis were like, "Hey guys, we kind of hate the Russians too. Like, do you want to like team up or something?" And Ukraine was like, "Yeah, cool." And so of course, and they were anti-Semitic. Of course,
That's a separate historical debate that we can't get into.
Yeah,
but I will say,
but I have to explain this to you because none of you seem to understand this. Okay, so back then, they were of course anti-Semitic, and there was like a whole bunch of genocides in Western Ukraine, mostly of Poles and Jews. There was like scorched earth.
This
It was
guy's a hack.
murdering. In Europe, generally,
he's
like,
a
the more
phony.
east you go, the more brutal these pogroms and purges get.
And you could tell by the
thing is
look
that,
on his
unfortunately,
face
this has been the norm for hundreds of years.
that he's
in
fed
Europe,
up with
of
them.
groups genociding other groups, and anti-Semitism has been like a constant theme. So Stepan Bandera, as horrible he was, and of course the level of violence was higher since it was far out in the east. Unfortunately, from a European perspective, that was not that special, right? And then later on, Bandera himself got like imprisoned by Nazis and removed from power, etc.
Wait.
It's complicated.
hold on,
So
but this is an outright falsification of history. The
no,
idea
it's not.
Okay, well, you're going to let me talk now because I let you do that. But the idea that Bandera is part of the Holocaust, if you don't know, the anti-Jewish violence in Ukraine perpetrated by the Banderas is just another incident of anti-Semitic violence in the history. That would be true if it wasn't for the fact that the Ukrainian nationalist ideology, even before the Nazi invasion, was heavily drawing from the inspiration of German fascism and Nazism, as were most of the other extreme ultra-nationalists across Europe at the time who had an anti-Soviet agenda. So what you're saying is a falsification of history. Bandera's anti-Semitism was of a Hitlerite character. It was not some traditional conservative European anti-Semitism. And I just find it hilarious that you're doing all this mental gymnastics to try and tell us that a literal person who helped perpetrate the Holocaust alongside of the Nazis is not a Nazi, is just a collaborator. but American paleoconservatives are somehow Nazis. I mean, that's quite the stretch.
Can I ask?
But I wanted to ask you.
Could I just ask a quick question about that, and then you can finish anything? I'm just curious. Would you consider the USSR a Nazi country?
Absolutely not. No.
So when the USSR is literally writing up agreements to split Poland in half and join invade it, and having non-aggression pacts and setting like the stage for like future alliances with Nazi Germany, how do you rationalize that in your mind? I'm so curious.
Yeah, it's very clear. The Soviet Union made several overtures to France and Britain and the other Western allied countries to form a security pact against the Germans. When the Germans kept going east to Czechia, they had their intention to go to Poland. The Soviets were left with no choice but to continue to buy time because they were not prepared for a military confrontation with the Nazis.
So left with no choice, like Bandera was in Ukraine, in order to like fend off.
No,
Soviet.
no.
The same shit.
Bandera was definitely left with the choice to not actually collaborate with the Nazis in the Holocaust. Yeah, he was definitely.
The USSR had to.
The USSR most definitely had to have a non-aggression pact in order to buy up the necessary time to build up its military and industrialize.
It wasn't just a non-aggression pact. They invaded Poland with Germany. They split that country in half.
No, Germany had told the USSR of its intention to invade Poland, and then the USSR said, okay, we won't go to war with you over this if you don't cross this line. Now, when the Polish government fled Poland in exile to London, the Soviets came to the eastern Poland. That is why at the time, the Polish government and the British government did not accuse the Soviet Union of invading Poland, and they didn't go to war with the Soviet Union, and that they went to war with Germany. And there's a reason for that, because the Soviet Union did not invade Poland. The whole pretext of World War II was the invasion of Poland by Germany. Why didn't Britain declare war on the Soviet Union?
Wait,
But did the Polish government flee before or after the USSR invaded, Haz?
Oh, yeah.
It was in response to the German invasion.
Did the Polish government flee before or after the USSR invaded?
At the same time.
Okay.
By the way, Haas,
do you know
Why would they flee if they're not at war? Shouldn't they be like chill? Like,
well, then why didn't the Allies declare war on the Soviet Union if the Soviet Union was invading Poland?
I'm not asking why they. I'm just curious how it's just interesting. Basically, forming like a long-term alliance, or had in the works a long-term alliance with Nazi Germany. But you've got like a rationalization for that. But Bandera is like literally evidence of.
Well, okay,
Destiny.
In Molotov's meetings with the German leaders, he explicitly rejected any long-term alliance and new order for Europe. He said, we don't want to form a new order, a new world order with you guys. We just want our security concerns to be respected. In Poland, don't go to Bulgaria, don't go here.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was totally, meant to just defend the Soviet Union, not to create this long-term alliance for the
and the USSR. Hold on, just another. I'm sorry, because there was the massacre, the Katyn massacre, or whatever, where the USSR is executing like tens of thousands of fucking Polish military officers and intelligentsia. You had the officials, the communists that fled Germany into the USSR, were shipped right back to Germany, and they were just like not aggressive, dude.
To the historian Grover, done a lot of work to show.
I don't have him to talk to right now. I just have you, Haas, to talk to.
Well,
do you think neither of those things happened?
I don't have time to go through the primary sources and evidence for all of those claims, so I'm just going to tell you that I deny.
Cheers, bro.
Yeah, like Destiny, you probably think there's a genocide. You probably think there's a genocide in Xinjiang right now too. So you're not the most reliable source in the world. But what I want to point out here is that you're making an argument about the Soviet Union protecting their security and whatnot. We saw Stepan Bandera literally work together with Nazi and massive SS battalions in Ukraine to band together tens of thousands of Ukrainians to slaughter hundreds of thousands of Poles,
SS isn't bad either. That's
Russians,
just
and
paramilitary.
Jews. And it's literally insane. You're trying to equate a security pact with literal Nazi genocide of Ukrainians. It's insane.
Well,
Yeah, but SS is just paramilitary. That's not bad.
You're actually fucking insane.
Do you have any proof that the SS was like controlled by the German government? It's just like
Say that again. I didn't hear you.
Do you have any proof that like the SS was directly controlled by Hitler?
You know, there's not a single record of Hitler actually ordering the murder of any Jewish people,
It
right?
was the paramilitary.
Like,
Did I say Hitler? Did I say with
I'm just saying when you're talking
Nazi
about the SS,
intelligence?
these are paramilitaries. And
Did
if the Wagner
I
group doesn't count, I don't know why
say
the
with
SS
Hitler?
is
Did I say with
Hitler.
Nazi intelligence? Because we do have evidence that he was meeting with Nazi intelligence officials to form these battalions.
Oh, the flaws in the narrative. I like it.
That's exactly what I circulate my words. Listen, at the end of the day, I do agree with you though. I do agree with you though. Azov something. I do agree with you. I do agree with you because you said.
I want to go from Adam to and then infrared after.
So I want to.
He's calling him Azov something.
It's not the. It wasn't the invasion of Poland. It was the special military operation into Poland. Okay, let's keep it straight, guys. Okay.
Yeah, that's an argument devoid of substance. It is very
shit.
Not,
Nice.
it was very clear that the invasion of Poland started World War II, and the Soviet Union was not considered a member of the Axis powers at that time, and Britain did not declare war on the Soviet Union, nor did
despite
the Polish
Soviet
government
efforts to become part of the Axis.
Nor did the Polish government in exile blame the Soviet Union for any invasion. Now, second of all, I wanted to ask a contemporary event. I wanted to know about
Never
these
happens to me.
acts of neo-Nazi violence that were, as Destiny put it, just part of the war. Was the Odessa massacre just part of the war when that happened?
The Odessa massacre was an incident where a pro-Russian mob met a pro-Ukrainian mob, and the pro-Ukrainian mob turned out to be about 3 times larger than the pro-Russian mob, and they actually pushed the pro-Russians into this building. I don't know, trade unions has something like that, and they pushed them into this building. And it's blurry what happened next, but like Molotovs and stones started.
The International Criminal Court has already done a preliminary examination onto this.
Like the building
Also-
caught fire.
I was going to say real quick, international courts have also ruled there's not a genocide happening in the Donbass, so you can't pick and choose when you want to side with international courts. Sorry, Adam, keep going.
Oh yeah, sure. So at that point, it was like most people died, I think, of the stampede and the smoke, because the building was actually set on fire. And then afterwards, that was pretty much so. Actually, a few months later, there was like a sort of terror bombing of.
I like how he glazed over that.
Like civilians, a couple of them died, but like that was.
A couple of them died.
The next. This
guy is such an ass.
At like presidential neighborhood, as in now. But that was basically the gist of the Odessa massacre, which wasn't really a massacre. It was two mobs meeting with like.
Yeah, I mean,
as during the Civil War.
That's a great attempt to whitewash a horrific act of neo-Nazi.
I know. I mean, this is what happened.
But we have countless
neo-Nazi
others.
violence.
Hold on, but we have other countless since the time. There was the crucifixion of Russians. There was the disappearance.
That's a fake though. That the crucifixion didn't really happen though.
Well, I saw it on video, so I don't know how it could be fake. And there's the several Russian journalists who I don't know just disappeared somehow. I mean, there was a clear campaign of intimidation, terror, and violence.
This guy has been
like
caught
now
lying
Russia,
so
right?
many times in this debate. He should be eliminated. He'd be eliminated just for being a straight fucking liar.
We're talking about Ukraine right now. We're
He'll
not
just
talking
lie
about
to make a
Russia
point.
right now, and
He'll be like, I saw a video of it. He's like,
the point is that there's a campaign of violence against people who represent the opinion of the Russian-speaking population in Eastern Ukraine. You said earlier that the Russian-speaking population in Ukraine is anti-Russian. Well, how would you even know that if their representatives were the victims of a systemic campaign of terrorism and violence and intimidation?
Like who?
Like the various Russian journalists. I can't name them
Like
off
who?
the top of my head.
Oh, you
Wait,
can't- okay.
when journalists are killed during these conflicts, it's a really big deal. We hear about it in Israel. It happened recently. The IDF murdered or killed a journalist during, they say it was accidental fire or whatever. Are you, just so I can understand, are you implying that like Ukraine is murdering a bunch of Russian journalists, but we just haven't heard about it at all?
Well, there are several missing journalists.
Can you answer that question instead of like...
They were literally shelling Russian journalists.
Oh, actually, Russians actually killed, I think, a Reuters journalist or a French journalist. He died of like artillery shrapnel. And
What's your evidence that by Russians? Because he was actually in Donetsk, and French President Emmanuel Macron didn't even say that he was killed by Russians. So he left it vague. What's your evidence, since you know more than Emmanuel Macron?
Side, though, like unless Ukrainians shelled their own positions, then sure.
Shelling their own positions
Feel free
in Donetsk.
feel free to
what an idiot.
They have positions in Donetsk, in the city center of
This
Donetsk.
guy's an idiot. Again, called on another lie that he just pulls out of his ass.
It didn't happen in the city center. Look it up.
Adam, you made the claim that it was just a bunch of random people that stormed the Odessa Trade Union House on that May 2nd when they slaughtered dozens and dozens of people. You
50.
leave out the part that it was Andriy Paruby who was in Odessa meeting with many of the individuals who were responsible for the violent acts that took place there that day. In the days leading up to that Trade Union Hall massacre. And this was a guy who was the leader of the Society to erect a Stefan Bandera monument. This was clearly an act carried out again with the same intent of all these Nazis to try and slaughter a popular resistance movement that was peaceful. It was just people sitting out in front of a trade union house to this coup government that was installed by the U.S.
Yeah, so I found the article. You were lying. They were not in Donetsk. They were on the way to Severodonetsk, so they were on Ukrainian territory.
Where
Yes,
were
no,
they
no,
coming
actually-
from? Where were they
no,
coming
wait,
from?
Their driver.
Where were they coming from?
Wait, hold on. Which are we talking about? In March when journalists were on the way to
No.
Kiev?
No,
No.
this was
Okay,
this was
because
now.
that was one time where those journalists, I think we watched videos of that, where they were ambushed by Russian recon squad. There was video of that, where you can see them getting shot at.
Well,
like,
that's
through their
not what we're
partners and
talking
everything.
about.
Okay,
Adam,
that's
so
cool.
do you
that's
deny
one
that?
issue.
Adam,
That's just
Adam,
one issue of Russians
Adam.
shooting at journalists. But go ahead.
Adam, do you deny that it was a government-organized event on May 2nd that resulted in dozens of people who were anti-coup government who were killed?
Is it Odessa right now? Like,
What?
are we talking about
Odessa.
Odessa? Okay. It wasn't a government organized thing. The government didn't even exist basically at that point, or it didn't have much power over. I mean, if the Ukrainian government had power to organize protests just like this in cities far away from Kiev, like 6 hours of driving, then the events in Ukraine would have turned out very differently. This was
So
a
Andrei
sort of
Parvy
grassroots-
wasn't the leader of a mass political movement
Andrei
that then
Parvy,
went
like,
on to become
where-
the
where
government
is-
of Ukraine
where is
in
his-
2014?
Where is Andrei Parubi's political party now? So why,
The chair. He was the chair of the Verkhovna Rada for 5 years.
Good. And how come Ukrainian far-right parties have 1 seat out of 450 now?
What's now got
because
to do with it?
Zelensky's regime replaced them. But at the end of the day,
Why
they
is he
held
talking about
power
now?
for
He's
5
talking about
years.
2014.
Wait, do they not have elections, or what do you mean?
Jackson,
by that?
don't let him railroad you, bro.
Zelensky is a centrist, pro-Russian, centrist, Russian native speaker, Jewish, centrist, liberal,
I'll agree with you. I'll agree with you there. I think Zelensky's campaign messaging was great. He wanted peace. He didn't want the persecution and the discrimination of ethnic Russians in Ukraine.
Greenie.
But clearly, he's lost that battle, and he's now affected by these same forces that held power from 2014 to 2019, like Andrei
do you have a
Parvy.
source on that? Do you have any source?
We literally have videos of Zelensky going bravely, I think, to the front lines with the Azov commanders in the Donbass, meeting with them, asking them to put down their arms and to talk about this. And they say, we'll talk with you, but we're not going to stop fighting, because that's what he was asking them to do. They didn't want to stop fighting, and there's clear video evidence released by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry about all of this.
So it would be, I think, easier to disarm neo-Nazis in Ukraine, sort of stem the tide of this neo-Nazi resurgence, which is, I guess, it's happening according to you. It would be like, if you're concerned.
Wait,
about
do you deny that that's happening?
One second. If you are concerned about the resurgence of extremism in certain cases, then I think we should agree that the best solution for that is for larger countries to stop fucking with the smaller country in which this resurgence is happening. Why does ISIS exist, for example? Well, U.S. intervened and destabilized the region, and then whoops, this caused a surge of extremism. Now, in Ukraine, this didn't actually cause a surge, though. That's the funny
I
thing,
agree with
because
you. I
Ukraine
agree
is
with you.
Ukraine.
The
Yes,
U.S.
so
The
if
U.S.
you're in your framework.
No, I
your
agree with you.
framework-
Larger countries should stop fucking with smaller countries, meaning the
Russia
U.S. should
should
stop.
America.
The U.S. should stop arming the Nazis in Ukraine. I agree with
As
you.
long as Russia
agree.
leaves Ukraine, and gives them back
Yeah,
everything,
you-
including Crimea.
Oh, yeah,
Isn't that
you-
what they were
saying
trying
that
to
the
get done in the
neo-Nazis-
Minsk Accords?
No.
Nope.
They weren't
you
trying
think
You
to
think the
stop.
Minsk Accords
They
were
weren't trying to
give back
stop.
Crimea?
They weren't trying
No,
to
no.
stop the Ukrainian Donbass with
the
U.S.
Minsk-
arms.
No, they were
Accords-
trying to cause a ceasefire to happen in an area where they were backing a civil war, where they've already
Oh, a
broken off territory
ceasefire.
from a
A
sovereign country.
ceasefire and a civil war. I understand now. You're
Minsk
manipulating the words into this
people didn't have any weapons.
Ukraine propaganda mindset.
No,
What-
it's-
They had no weapons. They had no guns.
What
They
is
had
it
no
called?
artillery.
Okay, so who is this civil
They didn't
war
have
between?
tanks.
Was it not between
They had
Nazis
nothing.
and rebels in the Donbass?
No,
No,
it
right
was
now the
Ukrainian-
civil war is backed by the Russian military against the Ukrainian military. That's what the
What
war
about the
is right
past
now.
8 years?
Since 2014, Russia has had official military ground in the Donbass. Yeah, of course.
They haven't had them there the entire
Look up-
time.
look
That's
up-
actually
Yes, of
incorrect.
course they
Selfie
have. What do you
soldiers.
mean?
That's incorrect.
When you say
There's a
not the
video-
entire time, then so are you admitting that they were there most of the time, or what are you talking about?
No, they definitely were there at different periods throughout the 8 years, but they weren't there the entire time or the majority of the time.
They have been there the majority of the time. What do you think about the
That's
civilian
incorrect.
airliner they got?
It's preliminary examination. That's incorrect. They do highlight the different periods in which Russians went to the joint operation zone, but it was only a few times. Now, were they providing artillery and heavy artillery at different times to the rebels there? Yeah, but they weren't there the entire
They
time
weren't
or the
just
majority of the
providing
time.
military, like the platforms that these people were using were sophisticated platforms to shoot down things, like Malaysian Airlines Flight 17. These were platforms that couldn't be operated by random people with no idea. Like,
And the
require
Ukrainians
Russian
had
military
heavier
personnel.
artillery.
Okay, and The Ukrainians are fighting a civil war in their country. I would expect them to use heavy artillery to secure their country.
Well, I
That
don't
doesn't
think it is
justify
their country. In 2014, the people in Donetsk and Lugansk voted overwhelmingly to become independent states.
That's not how that works. Just vote away to break away from a country. Do you
Well,
think the European Union would be
they try to do it in the
justified
United
invading
States all the
Scotland and
time.
holding them hostage
States
because
try
they
to
wanted to
succeed
stay in
here
the
all the
EU
time.
when the United Kingdom voted to leave? Like, no, wait. I want Jackson to answer that. Do you think that if the European Union put together an army and invaded Scotland, would they be able to hold on to that because they voted to stay in the European Union and the rest of the United Kingdom voted to leave? Do you think that'd be justified?
Well, you're making a false comparison here. At the end of the day, the people of Donetsk and Lugansk were facing not just harassment, not just discrimination and torture, but also death
But the
as a
Russian
result
guns as
of
well.
the
Yeah.
Ukrainians.
Hold on. You're not answering the question. I'll
Yes,
ask
I
you
am.
that,
Okay. Yes, I
European
am.
Union-
Let me
if the
answer the
European
question.
Union-
I wasn't done answering. You interrupted me halfway
Dude,
through.
this is
I
like
was
debating
answering the
Fuentes.
question.
Holy shit.
So let's just put this in perspective. If Donald Trump were president and he started, mobilizing U.S. military personnel to slaughter people in Los Angeles County, and Los Angeles County decided that they wanted to vote to break away from the United States and form their own sovereign independent, just be that they randomly voted, something caused that to happen. And at the end of the day, it would have been the violence that ensued from whichever government in power. And that government in Ukraine was installed by a U.S.-backed coup. And it was an illegal
Boom.
impeachment that didn't
What's a
actually even have votes
mukbang,
to
Greeny?
impeach
What do you mean?
Yanukovych.
You missed my mukbang.
So-
What's that mean?
When do you think the civil war in the Donbass started?
It started
2014.
It started to pick up speed after the coup took place.
But when did it
So
start?
it started after Russia
That's
won,
not an
and
No.
then after. And
No,
what do you
it
mean?
started
no? Do you disagree with
after
the
it
timeline, or-
started after the coup of Viktor Yanukovych.
So it started after Russia invaded and stole Crimea, and then it started after Russia was
That's
mobilizing
incorrect.
troops
What
in
happened
the Donbass
before Crimea?
to begin that
What
war.
happened before Crimea?
There was an
Who?
ousting of a prior leader who started shooting at civilians with police officers. I mean, what do you mean?
I mean, what do you
That's
mean?
not true. We already had this debate. I wrecked you in this debate. You tried to
didn't
make
wreck
the
anything.
argument.
All you
Hold
can
on.
point to is a phone call between two ambassadors saying they
Hold
prefer
on,
one
hold on.
leader
For
to another,
purposes-
and then you think that that's evidence
Hold
of
on,
a coup
for
being
purposes
staged.
of clarification, even historically,
It doesn't matter that it's new.
Hold on, hold
Ukraine
on,
was
but-
recognized in
Sure, but let me
1991 by
finish my
every
point.
other sovereign country in the
Yeah,
world.
I'd
That
like
state
to
could have
finish-
started existing in
I'd like to
2010.
finish-
Because it's
I'd like
been a
to
while
finish my
since we've
point.
heard.
So the founding of Ukraine, which is an extremely new state, the idea of this unified territory being encompassed by one sovereign state, that was founded on the premise that everyone was going to have equal representation, whether they're Russian speaking or Ukraine speaking, right, in the West. And it just so happens that the person who was ousted, as you mentioned, was overwhelmingly the representative of the Russian speakers within Eastern Ukraine. So after that coup, which ousted the person that represented their stake in Ukrainian sovereignty, I don't see how Ukraine can continue to lay claim to this territory.
He was ousted.
But how was he
It's
ousted?
not
Was
like-
it illegal
Those
impeachment?
elections were
Was it?
considered illegitimate.
Wait,
Oh, that's right, it
Haas,
was an
Haas,
Those
illegal
Haas,
elections are
impeachment.
considered illegitimate.
Haas,
Not like the ones
by
that happened in
the
Crimea
people in
after
the-
Russia invaded.
Destiny, was it illegal impeachment?
Was it? Well, he didn't get impeached. He ran away because he knew he was
No,
probably
yeah,
gonna
they
get fucked
tried
for
to
having his
impeach him.
police officers murdering civilians. in
Was
the
it
street.
illegal? Was it illegal impeachment?
No, but they held legal
The
elections.
country before that took
Wow.
place?
Jackson just owned you.
No, where did
bro.
he go to?
He ran to Russia.
No, he didn't.
Where did he go?
He went to Kharkiv.
First to Kharkiv, from Kharkiv he went to Russia.
Kharkiv, and then they had the right when he left for Kharkiv. First of all, they started to rain hellfire down with snipers on what they thought was his group leaving the city, and then they stormed his own personal home and government buildings. Do you not think that that's a coup,
That
considering the
storming
fact
was
that he hadn't
civilians showing that his residents
left the
just wandering.
country, and you admit that it was not a legal impeachment, right?
Do you think that a coup usually is democratic elections that occur afterwards? Is that a coup to you? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it can. It
Yeah.
definitely can.
Okay,
It
so a
can
coup
oust-
can be there is protest and rioting.
Yes,
a
because
leader,
I'll
the
explain
leader
why.
flees from his
Yes.
country, which he did, and then afterwards they
No,
hold
okay.
democratic
No.
elections,
So
and that's a coup.
Let's not pretend that him fleeing was choosing a new leader. There was sniper fire against him as he was trying to supposedly leave. All right, as he was trying to leave. To correct myself, there was a raiding, as Jackson put it, of his office. So there was plan to oust Yanukovych before he left. Now Yanukovych is the guy that the people of Eastern Ukraine voted for. They're not going to recognize any new. That would be like Trump deciding that he's not going to accept the elections and he's going to.
Hold on, but literally, Putin came out and said he would accept the elections of the Ukraine presidential election after he left.
The people of Eastern Ukraine weren't they're not the puppets of Putin. They disagreed. They didn't elections because they voted for Yanukovych.
What?
Now, in their view, if we're going to vote for someone and they're just going to decide that they're going to be able to coup them, like why should they?
He didn't just get cooed, he fled.
Well,
No,
there
the
was an
Verkhovna,
intent
that's
to
that's
illegally
factually
oust-
incorrect. The Verkhovna Rada for president, they declared him no longer president and installed an interim president prior
Hold on,
to
the interim president was the
Destiny,
leader.
can I-
Was the
hey,
leader
hey,
of the majority party.
modern day
It's
debates.
not-
Can I
Sorry,
have a
I'll
sentence
stop.
here?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Jackson.
The Verkhovna Rada had already placed an interim president in his place while Viktor Yanukovych was still in Kharkiv, by the way, and you admit that they were 10 votes short of actually legally impeaching him. Therefore, this was an illegal seizure of power.
Wow.
The interim president that was installed, who was this guy?
Let me pull up his
Who
name.
cares?
It was before Poroshenko.
It was the leader of the opposition party. It wasn't just a random guy. It was already somebody that was like massively popular in their electoral. It wasn't.
popular among portions of Western Ukraine. He was not representative of the.
I'm just saying, when you say installed a new leader, you make it sound like they picked a random dude.
He was installed because again they were 10 votes short of impeaching Yanukovych.
They were 10 votes short before, but after the people started getting shot in the streets, I'm pretty sure that like literally everybody
No.
but 6 people voted for the impeachment afterwards.
All international
I-
observers.
I-
One sec. I think Jackson maybe 30 seconds or so uninterrupted, and then promise we'll come back to the next person.
I mean, I didn't have a lot to say other than I'm still looking up the name of this guy that was before Poroshenko if you want me to. I'll also say that we discussed this Destiny last time and you kind of made a fool of yourself, but most independent experts that are investigating what took place on Square protest recognize that it was Euromaidan-controlled snipers, specifically Georgian snipers, that were responsible for the deaths in the Euromaidan Square. The Ukrainians, it was Euromaidan forces that were responsible for this. And everyone, regardless, does agree that the snipers were firing from Euromaidan-controlled buildings. That is one thing that everyone does agree on.
Jackson, actually, real quickly, I think you either didn't know or you lied about the timeline of Yanukovych's escape. Viktor Yanukovych left Kiev and then turned up in Moscow on the 26th of February 2014. Now, the first Yatsenyuk government was formed the day after, on the 27th of February. And at that point,
when did they declare that he was no longer president? Because that's what I was pointing out here.
Oh, I think that's at this point is irrelevant. If we want to go back to
that's extremely relevant. If he's still, hey, idiot, if he's still in Ukraine,
Hey, idiot.
If he's still in Ukraine,
let me finish.
I promise Jackson will come right back to you, and then
Sure.
I just want to hear from maybe 30 seconds.
And if you want to go by popular vote,
Hey,
in
idiot.
April 2014, according to a Razumkov Center poll, only 4.9% of Ukrainians would have wanted to see Yanukovych return to the presidency. So I guess that does it, right? Popular vote.
Okay. First of all, Destiny, his name was Alexander Tuchnov. I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Turchinov.
Second of all, yes, it does matter if Viktor Yanukovych is still in Ukraine, specifically in Kharkiv, the second biggest city at the time in Ukraine. If they are declaring him no longer president, set up the new government, but if they're declaring him no longer president, they were 10 votes short of getting a legal impeachment. Yes, that does matter because they are illegally forcing him out of power.
Like some like centrist liberal now, like the law, that we can't have a revolution. because
Yeah,
they're
I
like
think the
10 votes short.
constitutional law in Ukraine is pretty important when you're talking about the illegal seizure of power. Apparently, you don't think so.
In that case, we will never have a glorious socialist revolution because then
Wait,
it can just like be voted down.
Why are you?
But to be
bringing up-
clear, so Ukrainian parliament voted to oust Yanukovych on the 25th of May.
They were 10 votes short of achieving an impeachment. There was an impeachment vote.
Okay, well, all I've seen is that they voted him out. So are you saying that's
Well,
not true?
remember
or-
last time when Dylan Burns tried to argue that
You
he was legally
greedy,
impeached, and then we had to go to the vote tally and show that they were 10
your
votes short of getting
mukbang is
3/4
my burger.
approval of a legal impeachment?
Was this before police officers were firing on civilians, or?
So do
It's
you,
the
do you think
hamburger.
that the allegation?
Because I see here that the vote to remove Viktor Yanukovych from the post of president of Ukraine was
I'm
passed
live
by
on 6 channels on
328
YouTube
members of parliament.
because they shut me
So
down.
Such
so
ballots
often.
passed
So
by
now
what
I
is called
broadcast to
constitutional
6
majority are
channels.
binding and enter into force with immediate effect. So
Hold on. according to Ukrainian law, they were 10 short of the necessary requirement to get into
Was this before police were
Yeah,
firing
I
on
want to ask you
civilians?
that. I want to ask you that question. Do you think that an allegation of police firing on civilians is
Video
grounds-
of police firing on civilians.
Is that grounds for the dissolution of the sovereignty, which is their constitutional law?
I don't think there's sovereignty.
Live fire has been used against protesters in several countries across their history, not discounting the United States. Does that mean that the law and the constitutional law should be suspended?
No, but if
it's civilian.
the people of Ukraine disagreed with what was happening, I would have expected that to be
But
reflected in some
that's what
vote
you're not
afterwards. But that isn't.
understanding. The people of Ukraine were divided, and Yanukovych represented the people in the east.
All that Adam
and
just
north.
gave me, and based on the MP's vote to oust Yanukovych, it doesn't sound
No,
like
they
were
were 10
divided
votes
at
short.
all.
Why do you keep bringing this up? They were 10 votes short.
4.8% wanted Yanukovych to remain in power.
Matter. The
Are you
law,
getting
the
that
law
from
of the
Twitter
land
because
said
it
that you need
polls?
338 votes to get a legal impeachment. That's 3/4 of the Verkhovna Rada. They only had 328. Even with all the threat of violence, U.S. pressure, London's pressure, they were
US
still
pressure.
10 votes short of actually impeaching him while he was still in the country. And they declared that he was no longer president. You understand how that's a problem, right?
Okay, so this is my timeline
guess
that
not.
I'm understanding. Tell me if you agree with this. So there was a vote initially that you're talking about that failed by 10 members of parliament, right? Then the police deaths happened. The shooting on the protesters and everything happened. Then there was another vote on February 22nd, and then afterwards Yanukovych fled. And then on May 25th, there was an election. That wasn't the second impeachment vote, but I believe on February 22nd they voted to oust him. No,
February 27th?
22nd.
22nd
I'll link this,
was...
or maybe you can just say this is on the 22nd.
no, that's incorrect. In fact, it was February 23rd in which they took the impeachment vote, according to what I have here. Maybe, I
Link
don't
me
know.
what you have, because what I have here is a BBC article on the 22nd saying Ukrainian MPs vote to oust President Yanukovych.
So that was probably, I mean, it's a BBC article. That's probably them announcing that they were about to take this vote. And then, yeah, on February 23rd, they took vote short.
Why are you arguing this one point, guys?
Can you link me that? Show me that.
Okay.
Well,
So
you
articles
need
can
to
be
give it to
updated.
Jackson. He won this point and
The
move
article
on.
is not updated.
Jackson won this
Well,
point.
Then Jackson's
15 minutes
explanation is
ago.
probably the most.
Destiny, I think we have a problem. I think I heard BBC is run by George Soros.
Point is, it was an
Jackson likes to
illegal
mention him a lot.
impeachment.
That's a
So
completely.
that might
That's
be
all he
any
needs to
suspicious. Oh yeah, like infra.
say.
If
It
I
was
were you,
illegal.
I wouldn't talk. Like, didn't you debate like the Destiny, like when you teamed up with Nick Fuentes, like a neo-Nazi?
Again, you're bringing up all these insubstantial comments and arguments as to the actual debate we're having. I don't know why you would pivot to something completely irrelevant. Maybe it's because you're
Even
losing.
if we want to, and even if we want to move forward in this conversation, even if theoretically we were to grant every single thing that's being said, that there was like an illegal vote and that this was like a coup or whatever, and this is a bad thing, none of this gives Russia the right to invade the country, right? Even
Well-
if I wouldn't grant all of it, but even if I did
Okay,
grant all of that, this is-
Destiny,
Yeah,
I just
I agree.
sent.
That alone
Destiny, I
is
just
not-
sent it to you. It's resolution of the Verkhovna Rada of February 23rd, 2014, 10 votes short of getting a legal impeachment. So I was right.
link
and
me
you
the
were-
article.
and you
link
were
me
wrong.
Link me your in chat what you're talking about.
I just sent it to you on Twitter DMs. I'm on my.
Why
I'm
would
on
you
my.
send it on Twitter? Just send it on Zoom.
You don't have Twitter?
I don't feel like opening my fucking Twitter. Just
Well, I
send it
don't
on
feel
Zoom, we're
like
all
doing this
chatting.
again on my PC. I just did it for you on my laptop. Are you incapable of using Twitter?
Yeah, I am. I think Soros is reading my DMs. So
Okay.
the platform.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that alone would justify a Russian invasion, but
I agree.
you would have to do some serious revisions about the events that led to that. It's even their justification.
But just for the record, I was right and you were wrong. So you can
Yeah,
you can
that-
apologize for being wrong about that
Yeah, sure.
anytime you want.
So going through the article.
I love it. I love Jackson's attitude, man. Just
Yeah,
for
I
the
mean,
record, I was
if
right.
they
You were
were-
wrong.
even
You
if
can
they were
apologize for that
10 votes
anytime you
short, I
want.
mean, that's how revolutions work. That's how
fucking-
regime changes work.
What are you
So-
talking about? He was still in the country. This was a violent seizure of power,
He
and they
fled.
didn't
He
they
fled
didn't
on
get
his own
enough
volition.
votes to impeach him. So you're the whole the argument
Jackson
you're
debates
making
two
is like,
people
well,
at a time, man.
it's okay because there were some people who wanted this, despite the fact that the constitutional 3/4 majority was like, oh, well, yeah, there's a bunch of people in the United States who don't like Joe Biden, so therefore we should just illegally seize the power.
Okay, let me just read. Let's just read. This is
just one thing. Adam's saying something. He's saying something pretty interesting.
Let's just read this because this is what Jack sent me. Okay.
Hold on. Let me just. I just want to respond really quickly to what Adam said. You're saying that it was a revolution and we can just suspend the law. Well, I think the people in the Donbass would say the same thing when they decided to declare independent republics. That was their revolution. And you're saying 95% of people, if polls constituted grounds for a legal order, I mean, then we wouldn't even have elections. We would just take polls. Obviously, polling is not going to be reliable.
Those elections were made under Russian gunpoint, so that's a way different situation. I don't
Do you
know
have any? So are you
It's
trying to
super
say that the
complicated.
people of Donetsk and Lugansk are not overwhelmingly in favor of?
When in Donetsk and Luhansk there were
Top of the hour, it's time to smoke, Jackson.
Russian propagandizing that went on there.
Also, they're either being
One sec. Just 1 second. So yes, this is a very complicated composition. Interesting nonetheless. I don't know
Cheers,
if
guys.
you want to get into it though. Lots of nuance. But the thing is, Russia has been actively propagandizing in the south and east of Ukraine, the Russian-speaking parts, through their media empire. It's like imagine like a 24/7 Newsmax.
I understand. It's just funny to the United in the Anglosphere. And, you know, obviously the United States dominates as far as soft power media is concerned. So if you want to talk about people, I mean, what kind of ideas were inspiring the people at the Maidan? It was
as bad
US
as U.S. media can be.
Cheers,
the
WJ.
Russian media and Russia propagandizing is an entirely different beast. Don't worry about it. It's
yeah, but that's like your opinion. That's like your
no.
Someone could say the same thing about the United States media.
I would say Russian state media is like Fox News on crack, right? With some imperialist agenda. Like it's like a non-stop.
But the difference is that Russian media hasn't led to the wholesale destruction of places like Iraq, Libya, and the Middle East.
Oh, well, it led to the destruction of it, so I don't know what you're talking about. It seems like these reactionary states.
That destruction was overwhelmingly caused by the Ukrainian paramilitaries and military.
Oh, sure. The Ukrainians destroyed Mariupol just for fun,
As
right?
of
And, like, all
something
these
is a
cities,
ru-
like,
is
these
a
pictures of them.
That's what
Ukrainian
the civilians
shield.
say. You know, I didn't think this debate was going to be as
Civilians
easy
did
as
not
you
say
guys
that.
are
That is
making
not
it.
true.
Hey,
Anyway, Jackson,
this
let's
debate
be
is
honest.
actually
Your
incredible.
polls are reliable,
Destiny, do you want to talk about
Hinkle
this?
jumping in with
The
the
evidence
desire.
I put forward that there was a vote on
Yeah, can I-
February 23rd, 2014 to confer
Wait,
the
can I just
powers
read what
of the
you sent me?
president of
Wait, why are you so
Ukraine,
scared of
of
me
the
reading what you sent
chairman
me?
of the Verkhovna Rada,
Destiny,
and they were
please do.
10
I
don't
votes short
understand.
of getting an impeachment.
I don't understand. Can I just do what you sent me so I should be able to read it?
I asked you a question and you interrupt me as if I'm the one interrupting
Oh my
you.
god, dude!
You're literally
like you're
insane.
It's like
You're
unbelievable.
literally
And I
insane.
mean this in the most like might
Don't
be
read
like
it, Destiny,
borderline
don't do it.
schizophrenic. I swear.
Don't do it.
And I
Okay.
hope you find help.
I love
Okay,
you, Jackson.
So,
that was
linking
awesome.
what Jackson linked me, which was a Wikipedia article. The Ukrainian Revolution of February 2014 took place after a series of violent events towards protesters in the capital Kyiv that culminated with the flight and subsequent then president of Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych, who was then removed from the office. There were no articles of impeachment against Verkhovna Rada committee voted on February 22nd, 2014. MPs voted to remove Viktor Yanukovych from the post of president of Ukraine on the grounds that he was unable to fulfill his duties and to hold early presidential elections on May 25th. The vote came an hour after Yanukovych said in a televised address that he would not resign. He subsequently declared himself to still be the legitimate head of the Ukrainian state, elected in a free vote by Ukrainian citizens. The action did not follow the impeachment process as specified by the Constitution of Ukraine, which would have required a whole official putting forth impeachment charges and everything. But there was a vote that they held to oust him as president because in order for the government to continue functioning, they needed to do so because he had abandoned his post.
So
is that an unconstitutional vote or is that a constitutional?
I guess, but it's all, he left. And so to quote your thing, instead, the Verkhovna Rada declared that Yanukovych, quote, constitutional matter, unquote, and cited, quote, circumstances of extreme urgency, end quote, as the reason for early elections.
Destiny, he was still in Kharkiv when they took this vote, and the vote says, quote, to confer the powers of the president of Ukraine on chairman of the Verkhovna Rada, which was Torchnya Alexander, whatever his name is. And this is literally
Is
an
Kharkov
attempted
where the government
illegal
is ran?
seizure of power. And as you put it, an ouster of
really.
Viktor Yanukovych. There were 10 votes short of any to actually move through with this ouster. Yeah, it's incredible.
To do the impeachment, they weren't able to get the votes for it, but to actually oust him to make sure the government continued to function, it's so.
It's an illegal
that was not
seizure
a
of power,
binding
though. He's still in the country. There's no reason for there to be an ouster other
Well,
than
the reason
they are
they
trying to
cited
impeach
was
him.
because the guy's
Destiny,
government, and there was no way to run the government.
Destiny, I was really bad at math in high school, but I'm pretty sure
Hold on, wait, do you acknowledge that he
328.
left the
I'm
government?
pretty
Do you
sure
acknowledge that he left the government?
328 votes
Do you acknowledge that he left the
138
government?
votes. I think so. I think so.
Do you acknowledge that he fled? That he
Guys,
left, like,
one
he left the
second.
government?
The vote took place while he was in Kharkiv. But yeah, he did flee to
Kharkiv
Russia.
where he
He
to be,
did
like, the
flee
head
to
of the state?
Russia.
Is that what
Hold on,
He
to
fled
answer
to
this
Russia
question-
after snipers
Hold
rained
on.
down hellfire on his band of cars that they
After
thought he
he
was
ordered
in.
police
And then
to
there was a
assassinate
violent
protesters?
about
incursion into his office and in his actual primary residence. So yeah, after that all took place, he went to Russia, but he was still in Kharkiv.
So the argument here is that if a head of state is evacuating the capital, that is not the same as stepping down from government. If there's
I agree with that, and they didn't follow their impeachment process, but they did vote 328-0 to remove him from his post.
And they were
Which is not-
Actually, I actually have one important thing to add. At that point, after the firings, etc., I believe the reason why they didn't have the constitutional majority is because Yanukovych's party kind of just fled also and disbanded, and they basically all went to Russia. So I think that was the reason why they didn't have the majority,
Adam.
even though they voted 328-0, basically.
but you just called it a revolution.
It was. Fuck yeah,
So,
dude. Like,
so you agree that
I'm very.
it was not following the procedures of the form of Ukraine's sovereignty enshrined in its constitution.
It was following it. It was still a revolution. Those things are not exclusive.
They
He's an idiot.
definitely are incompatible. If it's going to be a revolution, then you're going to overthrow the
It was
prior
following
form
the
of
law.
legal
It was a
order, the
revolution.
sovereign order.
What?
So they didn't ask for their constitutional.
these guys are
requirements.
psychotic.
The legal order wasn't really overthrown. Like the same legal system.
Our
So was
boys
the
are destroying
constitutional
these two
requirement
clowns,
met, or was
man.
it not met?
It seems like the constitutional requirement for it wasn't met, but the reasons why were extraordinary. It seemed like they
That's
didn't want to
not
go through the
covered by
process.
But the Ukraine's legal order does not allow.
Can we
this
like
emergency.
use our can we actually use our brains a little bit, or is it really going to be this?
I would love to use our brains.
like,
What
if we-
you're
if we
telling
look at- if we
me,
look at
Destiny,
this- if
is
we
that
look
they
at this
didn't
coup-
have
well,
enough
look at
votes.
this coup.
Destiny.
After the
Gentlemen,
president.
you guys, sorry, but
The
people can't hear you.
violence.
Can,
The
okay,
violence of
after,
the
can I just do
Maidan-
my 30 seconds and then they can respond? So after he fled, they didn't go through formal impeachment charges because the country was literally in fucking chaos. They didn't want to run the courts and run the thing to figure out so they had a vote in their parliament to see what they should do. When they took that vote, the Rada voted 328-0 to remove him from the government so that the government could continue to function so that the country wouldn't fall into chaos. After they voted to oust him, they held democratic elections and followed their democratic process afterwards. That seems to be happening. Now, if you want to call that like an illegal coup or seizure of power, that's fine, you can do that, but don't pretend that he was just like kicked out of the government and they installed a new leader or whatever. That's not what
You can't have democratic elections to replace a president if you have an illegal ouster of said president. You just can't do
Especially when
it.
you consider that the entire pretext of him leaving the capital was mass violence being conducted by the by the people living in Kiev, who were not acting as the representatives of the entire people of Ukraine. So if that's the first place, of course it would not be legal according to any democratic constitution.
Why did he leave the country?
Because of the threats of violence he was facing.
Why didn't Zelensky leave the country?
Zelensky's well protected wherever he is.
Zelensky is what you told me on this platform, I think a month ago, that Russia was going to control Kiev in literally 3 days. You're telling me that Zelensky is invading his country, but you're telling me that Yanukovych was under massive threat because of some riots?
Not only riots, but various sniper fire. He didn't have Yanukovych did not have the Ukrainian security apparatus.
The
He
whole
literally did.
narrative.
The whole Belarus or whatever police force was still protecting him. Of course. What do you mean?
You
Yeah,
understand
that's-
that? You understand though that those police forces were being sniped from the Euromaidan-controlled buildings in Euromaidan Square, so they were literally killing police officers
It was
and
the
civilians.
other
Is
way
there
around,
any
I
actual
believe.
evidence of sniper
Yeah.
fire? Is that a real thing? Can you show me that?
What?
Sniper fire on police officers by protesters.
What
Like
do you mean?
massive
Is there
sniper
evidence of
fire.
sniper fire? You're the one who the entire time throughout this debate you've been saying that there was sniper fire on protesters.
No, what
throughout
I
the
said
Euromaidan-
was that-
Yes, you
what I
did.
said
You
was
said
that
was that
they-
before?
No, no.
Okay, well I'm glad we have video evidence. The entire
We have
time
video
you've been
evidence. So wait,
saying.
if you
You've
rewind
been
it, what
saying
you'll hear me say
Destiny,
is that
Destiny.
police
Shut the fuck up for a
officers
second.
fired on
Destiny,
protesters. We got
Destiny.
video evidence of it. I didn't
Rap
say
God,
sniped them.
Rap God, stop talking. So you've been saying throughout this entire debate that was it before or was it after the sniper fire began on the protesters? I don't know how
Never
many
said
times
that.
you've said this.
Never
You're like
said
a
that.
broken record, and now you're saying that there wasn't sniper fire, and you want proof of sniper fire
I said
on
that the
people.
police Do you want to bet like $10 on it if I said there was sniper fire from police on protesters, or if I just said police fired on protesters?
You said sniper fire.
I said police fired on protesters.
You said sniper fire.
Do you want to bet on it? Do you want to bet $10?
Sure, I'll bet $10.
Okay,
Is
we'll bet
this the
$10.
level
You give me
we're
the
on
clip,
right
I'll
now?
PayPal you $10 afterwards. If
All
I
right.
did say it, I misspoke, and what I've said a million times is that police officers fired on protesters. They absolutely did. There's video evidence looked at by third parties. You can go and watch it right now. It's undeniable.
Georgian police officers that were controlled by the Euromaidan protesters. Yeah, I agree.
No, they were literally the yellow, whatever, wearing police officers. You can see them in their police officer protected position.
That's a
shooting on
convincing
protesters.
argument, yellow wearing police officers, but what I can tell you is that Georgian police officers have actually admitted to this in testimonies.
Where?
You're just lying. This
Joe,
is-
you never
I-
come in
I
and
can't
talk about
engage
it,
with
man.
If you want,
We're doing a debate. We're watching a debate right
They
now.
admitted to
New
this.
York Times
You come in when I'm
police
doing it-
shooting
when I'm
Ukraine
watching a
reconstruction,
debate.
and you can watch.
I
videos
literally
put
go
together
3
by
times a day,
several
bro.
Hey,
journalists.
listen,
You look at
listen.
Thousands of hours of cell phone video footage, and it put
You're
together.
like a
you can
psycho
see directly
bitch.
police shooting from areas into protester areas. You can see them shooting and killing protesters. It's like.
Yeah.
It's like
Also,
super,
like,
yeah.
last time though, the last story was that the snipers were Polish. Now they're Georgian. I'm glad like they just like I guess changed with the wind. But no, like what we disagree with is that protesters, or like Azov battalion or members or whatever, or right sector members were sniping police.
You're like,
There were
yeah, I am a
firefights,
psycho
but
bitch.
the massive sniping of protesters happened by the police. There's
want
video
to
That's
evidence.
incorrect.
Happy
In fact, there was a
7/10.
forensic ballistic examination conducted by
go
the
and-
government.
I want to confess you, but I don't want to walk away from
Adam,
this
you just
debate.
put out a
It's so
false
goddamn
statement.
good.
Put out a
Wait,
false
wait,
statement.
Let him finish. Let Jackson finish. I've
Yeah,
heard this,
there was a
conspiracy theory
forensic
before.
ballistic examination which showed that the bullet samples, factors, and police alike in police databases did not match up to the assault rifles that the Berkut Kalashnikov was using. In
That's
addition
not
to that,
true.
we also have several former members of the Georgian military who testified that they and other groups of Maidan snipers in the Hotel Ukraina and the Music Conservatory were ordered by specific Maidan leaders and ex-Georgian leaders to fire on police and protesters, and that they witnessed the massacre.
The
this is just like
idea
general
that there
disinfo.
so just I just want to be clear on this. So you're telling me that you don't believe police officers ever fired and killed up protesters?
Now you're giving me like an absolute statement. Maybe, I don't know. But what I do know is that the deaths that we saw in the Euromaidan Square on that bloody day, where there was like several dozen killed by snipers at the control of the Euromaidan protesters and organizers.
Okay, so when I tell you that like the there, what is it? The bear.
We're just
there's a
gonna
big-
move past the ballistic evidence and act like that didn't happen. Cool, got it. Go on.
I don't know if you want to show me ballistic evidence. You feel free to link me that as well.
Okay.
But the idea, if we're gonna bring Olga Bulga up in this debate,
Ballistic evidence is kind of important. I don't know. Maybe
well, it depends on
I'm
who-
silly.
Oh, the Berkut. Those police
Berkut,
officers.
yes.
Yeah, they were ordered by Yanukovych to fire on protesters, and they did. We have video.
Why
evidence
did
of
the
entire
bullets
thing.
not match up with their assault rifles?
I don't know what bullets match up with their assault rifles mean. If you get an actual bullet and you get an assault rifle, you can look at the striations of the round. I don't know if that type of forensic analysis is done, but you can laugh all you want. But like we can watch the videos.
Oh,
dude.
it's just
Like,
incredible. You're just like, no, we heard this from someone, but the evidence doesn't matter.
The year is 2014. We've got video footage of fucking everything that happens. They did a full reconstruction, like of everything. You can measure when the bullet leaves. You can hear the sounds across time of cell phones, and you can see who's getting shot by
There was
who.
video
It's not a
footage of the
mystery.
coast of Kiev.
Hinkle, can you link,
Yes,
link the
yes,
forensic
yes. You did ask for that. I will.
Sure, and if anybody's bored, here's this in the Zoom chat. If you want to watch it later, like, you can literally watch the videos of people getting killed. You can see from multiple cell phone angles where the shots are coming from. We've got CCTV footage updates shooting directly into protesters. You can see from like 4 different angles the bullet going to the protester and killing him. You can measure the sound waves off of every single fucking cell phone that's recording it. It's not a mystery. Like, and then meanwhile on your end, you've got like Olga Bulga saying she does forensic investigation to prove that it's all fake. Like,
Oh, I
if
see
there's
what.
contradictory
One sec.
evidence-
I see,
there is
I
no
see-
contradictory evidence. Sorry, God.
I see
Wait,
what- I see
Adam,
what Hinkle is- I see
never
what
mind.
Hinkle is doing now. It is like a pay checking.
It's not a paywall article.
Yes, it is. For me, there's like a paywall.
I didn't even send it to you. How do you have a paywall if I didn't
sure.
even send it to
That's
you?
the one that I sent New York Times.
Oh,
I'm
sorry. Okay, sorry, but yeah, it was Destiny. Sorry.
I pay
Okay, no
so,
worries.
So Hinkle, please link it because I'm interested. Is it now? I'm gonna go through it quickly as Destiny takes the lead.
I like. Not only is like everything that's being said so far just completely without substantiation, even if it was,
We're literally the only ones
Even if we-
providing substantial.
said none of this gets you anywhere near allowing Russia to invade another country to try to break away territory.
That's a
This is
leap. You know, to get to where Russia,
CanadianDimension.com.
to get to the point of Russia invading Ukraine, we're just trying to first establish the legitimacy of Donetsk and Crimea because of the coup in the Maidan. Now, as far as the events leading up to Russia's intervention, that's a different story.
Sure. So let's say that there was a coup.
Russia decided that it wanted to settle the matter peacefully through the Minsk agreements, which the Ukrainian government had agreed to. Now, if
it's not peaceful to take territory from another country. You understand that, right?
Right. It's also not peaceful to have a violent coup. So that's where, you know.
No, hold on. Two wrongs don't make a right. If we thought that the Belarusian elections weren't allowed or weren't okay, do you think that means we can go and invade Belarus?
Sure, it is definitely not justified.
Oh, sure, we can. Okay.
It's definitely not just justified for a country to come in and just take territory, regardless of the will of the people living there. But when you do have an overthrow of the constitutional order, and the people of a certain region overwhelmingly decide that they want to join another sovereign state, that they're historically, ethnically, and
matters, but okay.
That is definitely not the same as a country just coming in and taking it. If people in their sovereign capacity decide that they want to join another state that they feel will represent them better than the one that had just overthrew their democratically elected representative, that's not the same thing as a country just coming in.
So if enough people in Texas voted to secede and they wanted to join Mexico, would Mexico be right to send an army into the United States to secure that territory?
If there was a coup in the United States that overthrew the constitutional order and there was all this, everything was thrown up in the air, and the people of Texas, for some reason, were no longer able to have any sovereign representation in the capital, then of course it would be justified.
Do you understand what you're doing for? Do you understand what you're doing?
Justified in this country.
Do you understand what you're doing for norms around the world when you say that if any country has a coup, another country has a right to come in and peel off territory from that country? You don't think that
is not what I'm saying at all. I am not saying.
That's exactly what you're saying. No, you're saying that there was a being represented as a result of that coup, so they want to break away and join another country. And you're saying that if that is the case,
that's not the same as another country just coming in and peeling it away, because one implies that they're just doing it at the expense of the people living there.
Not necessarily. You can peel away. We can probably find some people in Mexico or Canada want to join the U.S. and send a military there to go and support them. Like,
you're also acting as though that coup government wasn't responsible for its own civilians who wanted to break away as a result of the coup government
by
being
breaking
installed.
away, you've already committed a violent act. So of course I would expect a country to violently defend its sovereignty.
Didn't you say two wrongs don't make a right?
No, self-defense is not a wrong. If somebody's trying to break away from your country, you have a right to defend your sovereignty.
If someone overthrows your democratically elected representative,
they had democratic elections afterwards, did they not?
No, those were not considered legitimate by the people living there because they are.
Who didn't consider them legitimate? Even Putin considered these elections.
Eastern Ukraine, the people of
Eastern Ukraine don't get to unilaterally just say we don't like the elections, therefore they're not legitimate.
No,
it doesn't make any
sense. They do get to say that if you overthrow our elected representative, we don't have to recognize whatever new elections you're doing because we already voted for a guy before and you just got rid of him.
Okay, so so if they didn't like the new leader, they have a right now to basically break away.
That's not.
It's not whether or not they liked him or didn't. Of this president that was pressed by violence from thugs of criminals that were propped up by the United States and people like current Undersecretary of State Victoria Nuland.
Sounds like a true czarist over here.
True. Okay.
Yeah.
I think, Adam, you just confined yourself to making like these snide, insubstantial comments.
No, because my frustration with you is that you of course are way more into this like hard like leftist revolutionary aesthetic, and then here we are, and then I'm supposed to be like the either Lipkuk or Nazi or whatever, and then it's you who are questioning, like who are saying that a revolution or regime change is not valid to attend.
No, if you want to have a philosophical argument about
the glorious revolution failed because we were 10 bills short. Also, something interesting. Wait, just one more point. Yeah. Something that was also mentioned that like the mob stormed the palace of Yanukovych, right? Which is like it wasn't a storming. People just kind of showed up to his villa, which is where did that come from, right? The money for it, and people just strolled in. And to this day, it is the Museum of Corruption in Ukraine. You can go up. It's in Mezhigorye suburb.
Was this friendly occupation legal?
This is the same energy as Soviet communist troops, red troops showing up to the Tsar's palaces in Russia and looking around saying, "Wow, look."
No, the reason that's not comparable.
Now it's the people.
Yeah, the reason that's not comparable is because the October Revolution was already precipitated by the February Revolution, which overthrew an autocracy, which was not a modern democratic state. in any capacity. It was not some kind of constitutional order. It was a pure autocracy, which was overthrown already by you. It was the Kerensky government which was in power at the time, which also, lost in the constitutive elections with the unity of the Bolsheviks and the left SRs deciding that they wanted to get out of the war and overthrow. So, the comparison's completely void. You can't say
my point. My point was that you so vehemently oppose the spirit of this whole thing, right? Because Yanukovych wasn't an absolute monarch, but he was actually leaning towards it, ordering his police to fire at protesters.
Wait, but you're saying
he was. Hey, whoa!
Adam.
He criminalized protesting, for example, and he also made it legal to try people in absentia. So even if you weren't in the courthouse, you cannot defend yourself. Don't have a lawyer. The court can just sentence you to 20 years of prison for just allegedly protesting.
And the United States right now is illegally extraditing Julian Assange to lock him up in the CIA black site for 175 years.
Hold on, real quick. You think the United
listen, Adam,
States
something.
is anywhere comparable to the laws that
I don't know why,
Yanukovych passed when he fled the country?
Adam, I don't know why you keep bringing up this conspiracy theory that there was sitting down on the protesters that were controlled by Viktor Yanukovych when I just sent you proof, testimonies from the people on the ground there who were saying that they saw snipers shooting from Hotel Ukraina window, saw a sniper near the roof of the Hotel Ukraina sign, and another sniper on the roof of this hotel on Zhozhnevny Palace side. These were all Ukrainian Euromaidan-controlled buildings.
Yes.
There's no ballistic analysis in this article?
No, we do have the ballistic analysis too.
I went through this article. It's written by Chanovsky. This seems to be the conclusions of.
By getting
It is Russian propaganda.
Well said,
I will not look at
misanthropic.
it. The ballistic
Well said.
evidence is not worth my time.
I got coffee for both of us, by the way.
Underwhelming.
Oh yeah, no sources.
The guy's strongly insisting, basically.
There's an
he links
irony
to his
here.
study.
There's an irony here because you said something earlier. You said something about how if I'm a revolutionary, why do I think a constitutional order is important?
Yeah,
The argument
why
actually
are you
reminds
such a
me-
bootlicker?
And Adam,
Why are you such a
Adam,
bootlicker? That guy just said. Why are you such a
Because your
bootlicker?
argument actually reminds me of a literal argument Mussolini and Hitler made when they were reproached by the communists about suspending the legal constitutional order of their respective countries. Oh, it was just a revolution, just like what you guys did. And this evinces the fact that it seems like these ultra liberals and outright fascists and Nazis have the same line of thinking that
I am more pro-revolution than you are, actually.
you can just suspend the constitutional order of a country at the expense of the actual people living there. And moreover, not only can you do that, but you can actually deny the ability for people who want to, after the suspension of this constitutional order, have their own revolution and say that's somehow illegitimate and illegal. You can't at the same speak on behalf of the legal order while at the same time having overthrown it. So pick your argument. I'm not even saying that, I'm just defending the constitutional order of Ukraine. I'm defending the right of the people in Donetsk and Lugansk to exercise their sovereign right to secede from Ukraine.
Sure, but when that happened, when those votes happened in Donetsk and Luhansk, they were already occupied by paramilitary troops supported by Russia. So it was happening under gunpoint, same in Crimea. So those are not the same.
So when you say it happens under gunpoint, are you trying to say that if it weren't for that fact, there wouldn't have been overwhelming pro-Russian sentiment in those regions to leave? You're saying they're forced?
It was more. It
What
was
does
more
gunpoint mean? That's extremely
Gunpoint
dishonest,
in gunpoint, yes. In gunpoint means in Crimea, government buildings were taken over by the polite green men. That was Russian Spetsnaz, and based
Were
on
there demonstrations in front of those government bins who actually were expressing protest against the coup?
No, because the streets are full of Russian special forces with guns. And
So those were all Russian special forces who were gathering in front of the Crimea. Is that what you're trying to allege?
But the little green men with the advanced Russian weaponry and the green suits and no insignia.
What about the mobs
those
of
were,
resisting the ousting of Yanukovych in Crimea? Were those little green men?
who?
the protesters that were very frustrated at the idea that there was this illegal ouster of their president that they voted for.
Sure.
And then, wait, I'm not done yet. And then in addition to that, when, as you put it, they had democratic elections, they didn't want those people to vote in the Donbass. They didn't want people in Donetsk and Lugansk to be able to vote in the so-called democratic election. So I don't really know why.
I'm the
People in the
coolest
Donbass
guy
were
on
kept from
screen
voting
now.
For new leadership? There were no
Certain portions, yes.
Actually,
wait,
oligarchical governors were appointed by the Ukrainian government to, in this feudal way, rule over the people
Nobody else could do this.
Of course, like all
Never
of
heard
the
of
Hair
Yeah,
down.
Like,
And then-
I'm not-
Like
wait, I
May
wasn't done
does
yet.
into a bomb
This
rep.
actually, this actually more of a Russian thing to have regions be ruled by strongmen. This is a
Donetsk
great,
and Lugansk People's Republics overthrew people like Kolomoisky and other
Kolomoisky-
oligarchical families that had
Kolomoisky was-
directly
sure.
controlled the government.
Kolomoisky was in Dnipro, in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. The east was firmly Yanukovych area. So he was
Yeah,
the
but he was
local strongman there.
overthrown by the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republic. They overthrew and unseated these oligarchical families.
Yanukovych,
And
there in the east, Yanukovych was the bigwig in town, right? It was his base.
Yeah, but he was appointed after the Maidan was cleared. He was only dismissed in 2016 by Poroshenko. So that
Right,
was
so
years after
Viktor
the Maidan.
Yanukovych was Viktor Yanukovych still the active what do we say, governor of Donetsk and Luhansk Oblast?
God, you stutter so much.
No,
it's
he was
incredible.
not. Yanukovych was not.
Hey, do you guys deny that the Ukrainians were planning a full-scale invasion into
Why
the
do we
Donbass?
jump from like
And
one conspiracy
do you-
to the next? We
do
like
you-
can't solve
Yeah, I
any
mean-
point. Like,
Well, we put up all this evidence and we give you guys all these sources, and then you say, well, I don't believe these sources because
No,
they
I
are
went
Russian
to-
propagandists.
Wait, evidence
so
for- wait,
let's
hold
move
on,
on
I'm
to the
serious.
next thing that you're
wait,
probably
wait,
going
what
to
is-
deny, even though we'll give you evidence.
Wait,
Do you not
can you-
believe?
Okay, this is
No,
what happens when
hey,
somebody's
I
scared
let
because
you
they
talk
know they
for
don't
so
have a good
long,
point, so
Destiny.
they
I
just
let
go
you
from
talk
one
for
point
so
to the
long.
next, but
I let you talk
We've got
for
a
so
little
long.
bit before we go into the Q&A, so I do want to make sure that people are able to hear what you guys are saying.
Yeah, so at this point, like Hinkle is kind of out of arguments, and he's trying.
Yeah, I'm good
his
to
best,
I'm good to go like right to the Q&A.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I think we can do.
No. I would like to address one last thing. Do you deny
course you
that the Ukrainian were planning a full-scale invasion into the Donbass in March of 2022?
I don't know how you can invade your own sovereign territory that is like,
March of 2022, as in like a month, like weeks after the Russian invasion began.
No, prior to the Russian invasion being
was February.
launched, there was documents that were being prepared by top military brass that they were going to launch an invasion into the Donbass, a full-scale
Okay,
invasion.
so let me get this straight. Ukraine, so Russia masses all these 150,000 troops on the border.
Right on the
And
other
it's
side of
like-
the 100,000
Yes.
plus that Ukraine had amassed.
Yes,
in their own
and-
country.
In their own
And
country,
Russia's
yes.
were in their own country as well. Good
So,
job. I'm
yeah,
Yeah,
glad
but
we
the difference
clarified
is
that.
Ukraine is trying to
Socius.
control their own borders. Russia's trying to invade another country. Why would you try to
Yeah,
equate
yeah,
these two
yeah.
things?
that- Anthropic word, did you guys call them the Socias?
Said to be their borders.
It is because even Russia and every other sovereign state on the planet recognized it as their borders. Of
Within
course.
the,
Well,
within
but
the
the people
Budapest
living there
Memorandum in
didn't.
1994, the Budapest Memorandum in 1994, which Russia agreed to, or 1991. Anyway, Russia agreed to Ukraine's borders, and I guess that was,
troll.
that was like worth.
That was under the
it was
presumption
just a prank,
that the
though.
Russian speakers in eastern Ukraine were going to be democratically represented.
No. Where that wasn't
was-
written into the recognition of
Yes,
anything.
that
You
is
can't make it
written
conditional
in the
afterwards.
foundation- That is written in the foundation of since 1991, the modern European
No.
Ukrainian state itself.
Show me
and-
where it's written that we can invade your country if we feel like you're not
No,
representing a
that's
certain
not
group of
what's
people.
written. What's written
Exactly. So don't even try to
Ukrainian-
pretend, okay?
The Ukrainian state's founding was premised on the idea that everyone was going to be given democratic representation, including the people in the East who spoke Russian and also the people who were ethnically Russian. I mean, this deal was necessary for a stable transition.
No, it wasn't necessary for any stable.
Yes,
country.
it
Do you
was.
think,
It-
do you think the USSR had a call on whether or not the republic broke off from the USSR? The USSR
No,
fell apart.
no, but
they had no
but
control
on,
over
no,
it.
but on a multi.
Making up words now. No,
Countries,
what?
Countries like Russia, Belarus, and others, and also the Western partners who we're dealing with, all did have to negotiate the terms under which this was going to be happening. And then finally, it would have been unthinkable at the time for the stability of the region. I mean, it was already unstable. You had places like Abkhazia and Ossetia and Transnistria with these relations. I mean, so it was unstable.
These aren't
enough of a
disputed. These are
transition.
broken off by Russia.
Yeah.
No, they were not.
Okay, to get back
broken
to
off by
back
Russia.
to the point, the
Transnistria,
last
Moldova,
point that we were
Georgia,
here
yeah,
trying to
of
make,
course.
the last
Not by
point we were here
Russia,
trying to
but by
make
the people
was
living
that
there.
the brigade that they were planning to launch this formal invasion into the Donbass with was trained by U.S. and British instructors in Leverance with
We're not
NATO training
it's
programs.
their
So it was
territory.
literally they had begun supplying increased amounts of military artillery to Ukraine. Then they were planning this NATO trained Ukrainian brigades, and they were going to slaughter even more civilians in the Donbass, which is just
I'm going
another
to
reason
quote-
for
I'm
Russia
going to
launching this
quote.
protective mission, Operation
Protective
Invasion,
mission.
whatever you call it, to stop this from happening, the continued slaughtering that has taken place for the past 8 years against the people of the Donbass.
And a blood and soil genocide is more like it. But I'm going to quote Sergei.
You're literally a Nazi supporter. You literally are a Nazi supporter.
Yeah.
Your arguments are null and void. You post memes about Stefan Bandera. You defend the Azov people. Kind of incredible that you show your face. If I were you, I wouldn't show my face online because you're defending Nazis.
I'm going to close with a quote from Sergei Lavrov. We do within our borders what we want. We move our military. We do military maneuvers the way we choose, and no other country has any say in the matter. Sergei Lavrov. I think it applies to Ukraine as well.
Republics are disputed territory, and Ukraine signed the Minsk
Disputed
Agreement.
by whom?
By the people living there and the Ukrainian government. That's why there was a conflict. That's why there was the Minsk agreements, which the Ukrainian government voluntarily and then later claimed they had signed at gunpoint, even though France and Germany were also parties to that agreement.
Anyway, legally to this day, no one really officially contests the Donetsk agreements. Maybe Russia made statements to that effect, but as far as international agreements are concerned, Russia still considers that area to be Ukraine.
Yeah, but if international...
We can go to the Q&A if you want to, by the way, I'm done.
International agreements are not the sole factor in defining what constitutes.
Wait, I thought the law was super important. Now it's not.
There's sovereignty at the internal level and then sovereignty at the external level. Now internally,
it seems like
external sovereignty is determined by how mad your neighbors are, I guess. Too.
Yeah.
No, internal sovereignty is determined by things like this. I mean, read the basic foundation.
James.
Your liberalism, your liberal thinkers talk about the social contract and the need for an agreement to be come to between the government and the people. Unless what? I mean, that it is right and justified for a people to overthrow their government if they're not in a constitutional way.
A people to overthrow their government, not for a foreign power to come in and take over your shit when there's conflict.
While Putin recognized the new government of Ukraine, it's the people.
And its fence is falling over. Literally, it looks like a junkyard. His pool is full of green slime, and he feeds the frickin' bears.
Nationalists did not get their anti-Semitism from the Nazis. They were doing pogroms during the Russian Civil War.
Yeah, but the nature of the anti-Semitism, as voiced by people like Bandera during the 30s, was qualitatively different than whatever historical European pogroms were happening before. So that's that's like saying there was pogroms in the medieval times in Ukraine. It doesn't speak to the unity of the anti-Semitic violence during the Holocaust.
But Hitler's anti-Semitism and Nazi anti-Semitism was this like weird, almost ultimate culmination of essentially hundreds of years of like Christian anti-Jewish propaganda and like traditional European.
Yeah, well, you could also say it was actually.
I'll give you the last word, Infrared, and then we got it because the question was originally for you, and then we got to go to the next one because you're crunched on time. Infra, if you wanted to say something, like I said.
I was just going to say it was unique because it represented this post-Christian, pan-European, pagan idea that the Jewish people are foreigners to Europe and that they have to, and then just like this, like other so-called subhuman races.
Wasn't anti-Semitism across Europe, like all over Europe past World War I? Like it wasn't like one or two countries, right? But
yeah, but
anyway, next question anyway. Sorry.
Oh, this one from Mitchell says, question for both sides. If you had the power and money to end this war, how would you do it?
Supply more heavy weapons to Ukraine until they crush the Russian army to the dust, so we can restore the borders that Russia originally agreed to, and then we can later on we can do fun stuff like break up the Russian Empire into its constituent states, so we will not have an imperialist power wage active war in Europe into the 21st century.
Jackson, you want to go? You can go.
Yeah, very very simple. I mean, what Azov something just said is an effort to prolong the war. What I would do. And hopefully Ukraine would have some sense of, logic and agree to it and understand that if they don't, it's going to end up much worse for them. That you have to cede the regions that Russia has already established control over, including Donetsk, Lugansk, and Crimea, because Russia has the ability to continue advancing. Also get Mykolaiv, Zaporizhia, and Odessa. Very historically significant town to them. Ukraine must remain neutral, meaning no NATO, stationing of artillery or personnel or training in the country anymore. And all official outed Nazi battalions and regiments and political leaders must appear before an international tribunal to try them for war crimes, if any, crimes of aggression that would be set before an international charter.
Also, in addition to all that, because I agree with all of that, since we're talking about power and money, I would also invest in the infrastructure and economic development of both Eastern and Western Ukraine, such that the source of Nazi extremism and anti-Russian sentiment, because they're blaming Russia for their own oligarchy economy, I would have mutual economic development, which would lead to long-lasting peace in the region.
I would say that the agreement should be really simple. All of the territory should be returned to Ukraine. This includes the Donbass and it includes Crimea. Russia should probably even leave Sevastopol. I think they've lost any legitimate claim they've had to even running the base there. I think that Russia has shown that they are incapable of sustaining any long-term ground war. Their military discipline, for a variety of reasons, is just abysmal. And the further and longer that the war goes on, the more Russia's economy is going to suffer, and the more what little military honor they had will shrink and disappear into nothing.
Well, the ruble is the best.
Enemy's really being hit, huh?
Kind of.
Keep in mind that all of these guys that are laughing right now called that the war would be over in like a week, and
Well,
now
that's
they're on
the-
like
yeah,
the most
yeah.
massive.
Hold on.
Haas, you are literally on record. I can bring the clip up of you saying, admitting.
You're
that
literally
if
today,
anything
right now,
comes
that's
up-
saying that Russia's economy is weak. You're literally saying that Russia's economy is being hurt. How's the ruble doing? How's their international trade doing?
We gotta move forward.
I like how
just
Jackson
to be clear
defended,
about that, what I said was that, in
infrared.
my view, that things would not have gone as planned. Well, I was
yeah.
wrong about that.
Oh, they
I was
didn't.
wrong. But
Let's
will
go to
you
the next-
admit that you were wrong about the
This one,
depreciation?
guys, I hate to
Were
do
you
this.
were you
Great
wrong about the
interference for him.
ruble being totally worthless,
That
even
was
though
cool, Jackson.
not only has
You're a
Their
good
currency's
friend,
having
bro.
extreme trouble right now, but
He's
okay.
a good
the ruble
wingman.
has reached historical
Bloomberg
highs.
just announced that the ruble's the top performing currency in the world.
There you go.
That's so crazy how that works, huh? Not only
You are
is the ruble
such
the
a
top
dumbass.
performing
It's
cur-
really
not
You are
only is it the
such a
top performing
dumbass.
currency
It's
in
really
the world,
incredible.
Russia's military is one of the
It's
strongest standing
incredible.
armies in the world as well.
Oh,
The
hell
military
yeah,
discipline
yeah.
is
You just
strict.
deny
The-
all
the
reality.
defense that they have for their
Okay,
armored
guys,
units
I-
is super on point. Everything is
gotta
going
go.
exactly.
It's incredible.
This
Destiny,
one-
you're
coming
so
up-
triggered.
Incredible.
Pedro,
You're
next
so
question.
triggered.
You gotta go. Pedro
so
H. thanks
triggered.
very much. Says, why pro-Russian Ukrainians don't move to Russia? Why not offer asylum? It seems a simpler solution than annexing a whole country. It's $5 by the way.
Because
Oh, that's an
they-
easy one. Oh, who's
Yeah,
that
yeah.
for?
Because it's there where they're living, where they're settled. During the Soviet Union, that was the bread and butter of their way of life.
Yeah,
How
that's
did
their
they get there,
home,
by the way?
man. Why would you
It's
want to
a-
leave your home?
It depends on who.
It's where you
Some
live.
were there.
How
You
did
know,
how
they
did
don't wanna
ethnic
leave.
Russians get to Ukraine, by the way?
They're Russians
is
and they
like
live in Ukraine.
centuries.
They don't want to
Funny,
leave.
funny historical
Centuries?
reasons.
So
No,
the
that's
real
centuries.
answer is
That-
Russia doesn't want those ethnic Ukrainians or the ethnic Russians from Ukraine to go back. They don't give a fuck about those people. Those people are only in Ukraine so that they can have a claim to the territory. Why would Russia want all the ethnic Russians back?
They've
Then
been
they
there
have
for
less of a
centuries.
reason to do a civil war over there.
Destiny,
course
I
they
know
want
you're
no
triggered.
over there.
Destiny, I know you're triggered, but no one can hear you or
Hold on,
understand
do
you when you talk that fast.
not even-
But,
do you not even know
what I
the
will
term
say is
Novorossiya is? They've been there for centuries. What are you talking about?
The reason why they should not have to flee to Russia is because that is their home, and they shouldn't have to leave it because a U.S. installed apparatus has decided that they want to harass, murder, and torture the civilians there because they don't like their leadership or their controlled leadership.
Okay. Next question, I think.
I'm the
We're done.
only channel on the
It's
internet that's
not
covering
that I
this
support
debate
Ukraine, it's that I
while
support
showing you
humanitarianism.
live deer.
Needless to say, a
Simultaneously.
lot of innocent
It's
lives
the first
are
on the internet,
being
right here,
lost,
folks.
Though.
You're
Putin,
seeing it here
Putin
now.
needs to stop.
Bro.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, the most horrible thing is that like Russia went in saying that like, oh, we'll protect the Russian-speaking Ukrainians from the, like the little Russians from the evil Ukrainian Nazis, and most of the and essentially
All
the
10 of
overwhelming
you.
casualties of the war are Russian-speaking Ukrainians
Be
because Russia is just
amazed.
going fucking scorched earth. As we've seen like cruise missiles hit residential neighborhoods, artillery barrages, the TOS-1 thermobaric missiles hit housing areas. Massive civilian casualties in Mariupol. Currently, they're trying to cover up the civilian death toll. We see mass graves upon mass graves.
It just so happens that
of course,
YouTube
Russians
censorship-
were saying that the Azov did it, but like in Ukraine, I mean, it's like someone takes a shit on the street, Russia will say it was Azov. So
It just so happens that YouTube censorship enforces all of these allegations you're saying. We're not even allowed to contest any of them.
Fucking
Yeah,
Susan
because
is
it's-
at it again. God damn it.
Yeah. George Soros cocked you up.
Would you deny that? Because
coming in
it's
from-
literally- your
How
view
you
can't
do
even
this.
be debated because it's enforced by YouTube
It's-
censorship.
And yet here we
Yeah.
are debating it right now.
Yeah.
No, we're not debating it.
various individual claims he just made about Russia.
We literally can't talk about that, or else they'll demonetize us.
Yeah.
Demonetized.
Permanently.
Wow.
They remove your
that-
super chat ability.
They also can issue a community
That is
report
not
right,
censorship.
which actually happened.
This
That's
one coming in
not
from-
censorship. Saying if you talk about something, they're going to remove your ability to monetize your content.
They also
Yes,
issued
that is not
community strikes.
censorship. Sorry.
They've also issued suspensions over it as well.
If
so
you
I
want
don't know.
censorship, look at what Russia is doing with its journalists.
If
That's
you want
what about
censorship,
it?
if you want
Russia doesn't
censorship,
have
no,
anything
last thing. It's Zelensky has done in banning all opposition parties and locking up, imprisoning, torturing, and killing
Yeah, and look at
dissidents
banning all
and journalists who
opposi- wait,
oppose
what?
Zelensky.
No,
Look at what Zelensky
banning
has
the-
done
The
to
SBU
people
death
like,
squads. Look at what the SBU death squads
Look
did.
at the long list
Although,
of names.
considering
of
that
people-
you're a big fan of
CIA
Bandera, I
black
can't
sites and
imagine that you have a problem in the world with the SBU death squads.
Jan Taxier.
Is it like the
was a
FEMA death
journalist
camps
who,
or
was
something?
detained.
Like, is this some kind of like far-right conspiracy theory that you guys are like pushing?
You're the only conspiracy theorist here.
Oh, of course.
Yes.
Anyway,
We have this one. Fernandez T says, here to support you, James. Thanks for your kind support, friend. Says, and by the way, 100% of super chats are going to go to charity today. That one is linked in the description box. Let's see. Thanks for your support, though. And Captain V says, for SB3, says, what's worse, a league of grind or this debate? This one coming in from Chris Morlock says, for Lestiny and Soydom. Ukraine, sorry is what it says. They say Ukraine reformed, I love you guys. Ukraine reformed its National Guard in 2014. It had not existed since 2000. 7 battalions were instantiated from ultra-right groups. Source, Wall Street Journal, 2014.
I mean, what percentage of those people were Nazis? What percentage of them were like nationalist radicals? We don't know. This is just like, source, please.
Yeah,
But
it's almost like how you-
it's a good boogeyman.
how many
though, for,
people
like,
in
for
the
Russian guys.
AfD are Nazis?
Quite a lot of them. The AfD has
Can
two
you
wings
measure that?
actually. Yes, absolutely. In West Germany, there is this based on like polling data within Germany. In West Germany, the AfD is generally trying to be like a more traditional right-wing populist party. In the East, it's full on blood and soil, and you can actually keep it up.
Okay, well, I don't see the data confirming.
Look it up. I mean, Wikipedia.
Okay, well,
Unless it's
there
too
you go.
suspicious for you.
I think this is a debate between people who know what they're talking about and Wikipedia.
What is?
You realize that
Yeah.
Jackson literally linked me a Wikipedia article earlier to talk about the.
Yes, I use your own source to prove you wrong.
Thanks.
Something
Okay,
that you still haven't apologized for, but whenever you want to, I'm open to it. I might
All right,
consider your apology.
All
What
right.
does
Donald.
Lestiny mean anyway? The analytical failure says if there were 10 votes short, that's how coups work.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay.
Also said evidence of
I
sniper.
don't know. I want people to know. Don't you understand that there's been elections in the U.S. where the margins were really small? Those margins matter.
True.
Chris Morlock says 2014 referendum held in Crimea, Donetsk, Lugansk. 92% voted to join Russia. You claim the entire population of these areas, 7 million people, over 85% turnout, was at Russian gunpoint.
Sure. Do you think there was like an incentive to go out and vote? Actually, you know what? The better question.
When the
What if-
Ukrainian
what if-
military is
wait,
there-
wait,
Hold on, let's
the
give it to
question.
you.
The question was for me. In those areas, the Ukrainian military was not there. The Ukrainian military did not exist almost at the time. It had like 2,000-3,000 deployable troops, and that's it. So. A better question though, what would have happened if people accidentally voted that they want to remain part of Ukraine? Like, do you think Russians would have just like packed up and it's like, okay, well, I guess we're the people, and we have just left Crimea and left the Donbass, the Donbass? Of course not. The people, pro-Ukrainian people at that point, so these referendums happened later after the Russian takeover. So, I mean, pro-Ukrainian people kind of saw the writing on the wall. There's Russian troops, abducting people, etc., and essentially threatening people. So like a massive chilling effect as well. So those people who are pro-Russian will stay. Those people who are pro-Ukrainian will most likely leave, as it happened in Crimea, for example. But actually, the Russian, some Russian organ, like I have this long video about Ukraine. Check it out. In that, I covered that this Russian state organization accidentally leaked the real Kremlin, the real Crimea referendum results. And it was really close to 50-50, with much of the pro-Ukrainian population having
I'm
already
sure that
fled.
was real.
Oh, sure.
Adam, I have a
Those
question for you.
screenshots.
I have a question for Adam.
Oh, it's the Q&A section. Feel free.
I know. I have a question. Adam,
I'm sure it's gonna be good faith.
Yeah, no, it's very good faith. Adam, your videos prior to starting the Ukraine coverage, I thought they were pretty interesting. They're about infrastructure. They're about like transport. You seemed very obsessed with making sure that the trains were arriving on time,
Oh, right.
and all the different areas you were covering
That's a
and
Nazi.
talking about.
Like a
Very,
Nazi.
very obsessed actually with trains arriving on time. So I'm curious,
Holocaust,
what led you
Auschwitz,
from
Nazis.
talking about trains arriving on time to go to defending Nazis like Stefan Bandera?
It's funny.
Yeah, Holocaust, trains, Nazis, Auschwitz. We get the idea. Sure, I don't defend Nazis. In fact,
You have. You defended Azov and Stefan Bandera.
I didn't defend Azov. I said I support the idea of throwing Azov at the Russians. That way, imperialist aggression from Russia and a bunch of Nazis die in the process. This is consequentialism.
Also,
I think
you
this
claim
is
that
the
the
most
presence of a
optimal solution for all.
military means it's at gunpoint. Have
The
you ever
presence of a
considered-
foreign military, dude. How can you be so
okay,
dense?
hold on. Okay. Have you ever considered that if, let's just assume you're right and the foreign military was there, you ever consider that the foreign military was only there because it was like overwhelmingly already known that the region had pro-Russian sentiment? Now, it wasn't formally
What? It doesn't
measured.
matter. I don't know why you
That's not
keep
how this
using this
works.
childish argument. Whether or not you have pro whatever sentiment or anti whatever sentiment, you have the right for military to go into another country
But, like, okay,
and hold
you're
new
saying a
elections
foreign military
while they're
would be-
occupying a country.
This is the same deer that's come by and hung out with her man. She's got a
Militaries aren't
cataract
decided
or
by
a
their
growth
language.
right on her eye.
Many of them are even citizens.
On her right eye. It's the same
Militaries
two
aren't
deer.
decided by where else
Destiny.
other people have citizenship. What?
Destiny, like
Yeah,
how's
I
it
know,
now-
but-
I've
how-
noticed
how's
that
it
thing
now-
on her eye. When I was sitting out there and they were coming up to me, that was them. And it was actually the male. Was it the
can be
male that was walking up
resonated
towards me?
coerced.
Sure, it
You had a
can, but it-
military
I think it was the
that
male
took
that
a
was very
country-
close
took
to me.
part of a country away from another country and then held new
Yeah.
elections.
For that to happen, but in context, it's clearly not the case.
Sure, let me
Well,
ask you this.
did
Look, one good faith question that Adam kind of posed earlier, okay? If
Yeah.
they would have voted to stay with Ukraine,
Yeah.
do you think Russia would have packed their shit up and left?
I genuinely do. I think they would have been.
You're
they would have been
absolutely
shocked.
delusional.
They-
I don't need to hear it.
They would have been
You're
absolutely
delusional.
fine with
I
it.
think they would have been so shocked that they had miscalculated
So
what
shocked.
the sentiment in that region.
Yeah,
We're talking about
miscalculated
regions
like they have their
We're talking
entire
about
war
regions-
effort.
Destiny.
We're talking about
No,
regions.
one last thing, because I didn't get to put my 2 cents in this
Yeah,
round.
let's-
One last thing.
I don't
It's
even think you have
incredible,
2 cents to put together.
Destiny. It's incredible that you're putting this argument forward when literally Viktor Yanukovych was the one who said he didn't want to work with the EU, and as a result of that, the U.S. actually cooed him out of political
Yeah, you
leadership
can
in
say
Ukraine.
him. Say that as much
So
as you
you're
want, but
trying to
there's no
act
evidence
like,
for it.
oh, Russia's
There's
the one
no
doing
evidence
this.
for a coup. You can say it
No.
as much as you want, but there's no
You
evidence.
can make the argument maybe Russia would have done it, but the U.S. actually did it in Ukraine. The U.S. actually did it.
Bro.
Hold on.
T1000.
So Crimea was brainwashed, but the
Adams
Maidan
made
people
so
were not
many
brainwashed
poor-
by
The
it.
Maidan people were Ukrainians that were
Poor
protesting
he's
for
just-
months.
They weren't brainwashed
lied
by,
about
Western
shit.
media, but the people in Eastern Ukraine
And he
were.
doesn't
were
recognize the
brainwashed
facts
by
when he
Western
gets
media. They
proven
saw Western
wrong.
people living
And he
happy,
doesn't recognize when
democratic,
other people are
economically
right about
prosperous
shit.
lives, and they thought, "Wow, I want that."
Yeah, their lives have gotten
That was
so
the
much better.
brainwashing
Their
that happened.
their
They
lives
were
have gotten
also
so
caught
much better.
down.
It's incredible how
Aw.
the state of Ukraine has just prospered.
Oh no! When the
True.
Russian oligarchs were running fucking everything in Ukraine, they were doing way better then. True, absolutely
the thing
true.
is
Absolutely,
that-
it's not like Ukraine is one of the most corrupt countries in the fucking world. Leading,
And you know what? You know what, Destiny?
Western
If they
model of liberal democracy that gives rise to oligarchy historically in that. region.
There we go. Now we're getting to the real Russian argument. These would actually be fucking like slimy. If you want to have the real conversation of like the collapse of like Western liberalism and Russia seeing itself as like kind of instilling itself as
Well, no.
kind of a new world, like
The-
multipolar
the-
thing in the East,
Soviet-
that's the conversation.
Ron,
The
Soviet
real
assets
reason
were
why Russia's
privatized.
invading Ukraine.
Plus,
You guys aren't honest enough to have that
assets
conversation.
were privatized, and the free market
forward.
decided.
I'd be happy to have that conversation.
Concentrate-
No, you decide. You won't admit that that's the actual rationale of everything happening.
Hold on.
If you-
you realize
that's an
what it
interesting
is?
conversation,
Hold on,
but
you
you're not a
realize
good
the
faith actor to
entire-
have that.
Happy to have that
The entire
conversation.
reason
Three
for
of you.
Putin's-
Hold
The
on.
entire reason for Putin's illiberal
No,
authoritarianism
we have to.
is because
we have
under
to move
liberal
forward.
democracy, oligarchs reign free.
Pause.
That's why Putin has to be
You have to move
authoritarian
forward.
to rein them in.
Must move forward. Gnarly Bonesful says, "Can Jackson Hinkle update us on the NATO commanders in Avastal?"
No, I can't because the Russians have not publicized any of their names, but they have announced that there's going to be war criminal tribunals that involve NATO instructors in Mariupol that take place.
Wow. Imagine our show.
Destiny and Adam, how does it feel? Let's see. How does it feel to be losing the conflict? And I don't know if they mean that if they're trying to suggest that
I think they mean the
They can't be
invasion.
talking about Ukraine losing the conflict because
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what's.
They say, and looking at Novorossiya.
Yeah. Okay, so they do mean the conflict. No, I mean the Russian offensive in Severodonetsk.
I don't care what that guy said. Mom, that male and female that came really close to me that day, the deer. Okay, they're both here. She's got like a growth on her eye, on her right eye. That's how I know it's the same pair. She's laying down right here by the window.
No, but these are deer that have been here before, and he recognized them because she has a growth on one of the eyes.
Mom, she's laying down right here. She's laying down right by the window. And he's right there too.
They're just laying, they're just here in the yard, they just come every night.
Ukraine is currently losing 100 troops a day. That is a staggering amount.
So yes, cold war, but like Russia lost Kiev, they lost Kiev. Ukraine is now counterattacking.
Russia did not lose Kharkiv. What was the first one you said? What was the first one you said?
First they lost Kiev, and then they
Wait, what battle
Yeah,
ensued
yes.
Kiev?
Young.
Show me the
No, they're
evidence.
adults.
They're adults,
at least
but
2
they're
years.
young.
At least 2
Battle
years.
ensued Kiev.
Look, Ben.
Russia
The hawk
has
just
like
flew into the
retreated
tree.
from even
Oh,
attempting
right
to
in
get
front of us?
talking
Wait,
about.
no. My
See it?
my
Right
question is,
here.
what battle
There was-
ensued in Kiev?
There was
There was no battle.
Mom, we
in Kiev.
had a
Okay,
big
good.
red-eared
I'm
slider
glad
turtle
we
this
figured
big
that
in
out.
the
I'm
creek
glad we
today.
figured out that there was
It's
no
just
battle in
This
Kiev.
big turtle.
Great. Thank you for pointing out the
Where's the
obvious,
hawk?
Adam. Something there was no battle in
Where's
Kiev.
the
No, that's
hawk?
great.
Honest question
The
though,
hawk
wait,
Ben.
Jackson, honest question, like who do you think
Right here.
you're convincing
here?
with this? Like,
Stand
there's
up.
no
You
I
hawk.
just
see it, I
said
see
there
it.
was
Oh
no
my
battle
God.
in
We
Kiev.
have
You just admitted it.
Right here.
Yeah, because
The hawk is right here.
Just flew into the tree. So it's
So if there was,
deer,
hey
it's
Adam,
a
if there was
female
no
and a
battle
male.
in Kiev, in Russia, they surrounded Mariupol with a 4-to-1 troop ratio. Kiev, at best, they had a 1 to 1.5 ratio of troops, meaning they had no intentions to actually invade the city. Do you think that potentially they were staging troops in Busha to try and offset Ukrainian troops in Kiev and make sure that they had to stay hunkered down there so they couldn't fight in the Donbass?
He's hunting. He's hunting.
That's called a feint strategy. Have you never heard of it?
It's consistent with the original.
And in fact, Adam, last thing here, because this is important to what you said. You are literally arguing that in Severodonetsk right now, that operating a feint strategy, but you act like the Russians couldn't have potentially argued or carried out a feint strategy in Kiev, which is what they did.
It's the best feint ever, dude. Like lose.
It is. They kept.
everywhere on the ground and then
Got him, dude. Got
They
him.
didn't fight in Kiev. You just admitted they didn't fight in
Dudes
Kiev.
with fucking rocket launchers on their shoulders.
So if they didn't fight in
infantry
Kiev-
accompanying literally any of their troops anywhere.
Reddit
Reddit combat footage. It's you can literally watch the video.
If they didn't-
what
if they
world
did-
are you
hey,
losing
Adam.
tanks to one dude stepping out of a fucking garage with a fucking rocket launcher? Are you
Adam, if they
serious?
didn't fight in Kiev and they were feinting to keep troops stationed in Kiev, and that's what they've continued to do through a troop presence in Belarus, what do you think that they would otherwise be doing there?
So yes, because the troops around Kiev are troops that are territorials mostly who would have stayed there anyway, and Russia knew this. So this was the whole thing. The mobile part of the Ukrainian army, which can be sort of can be sent east, like those were already sent east. The people who were around Kiev, most of them were territorials. So even if it was a feint, most of the troops would have stayed there anyway. So it was pointless, and it's even more ridiculous. But of course,
Which is why the Russians left, and they still maintained the presence around Belarus. They left after a month of being there because they realized they didn't have to be there.
It's also consistent with Russia's
I want to jump into the next one. This one coming in from
never stated
Djalma. Let's see. Love watching people like Destiny defending. They say next time he claims someone is quote dog whistling about a Nazi conspiracy theory, just remind him he supported genocidal Nazis against Slavic people.
Are you talking about NATO shit in Yugoslavia? I don't even know what that's a reference to, but okay.
Urging CIA rad lib. Question for Destiny. It's just, folks, we're looking for meaningful questions here. Sorry, Steven. Okay, this one coming in from you've got thick skin. You've been on the internet longer than I have. Okay, Bubblegum Gun says 80% of Ukraine government positions are held by Israel.
Okay, it's true.
it's a full-on Nazi.
From Pole says, I was agreeing with Jackson at the start, but then he made fun of the other. See, he was being rude. Question for Adam. What are his thoughts about Turkey blocking Finland and Sweden from joining NATO?
As for being rude to Adam, I don't have a lot of sympathy for Nazi defenders. As for Turkey and NATO, I think
Question
Turkey.
for Adam on what he thinks.
Oh, go for it.
So Turkey is now, like, Erdogan is a huge piece of shit, obviously, but like Turkey is now trying to eke out some sort of concession from NATO countries. They will not keep up the bloc forever, I think. But what they want to, basically, Erdogan is trying to tie up some loose Kurdish ends with this, because Sweden and Finland have been like friendly to Kurds, and plus they're trying to end the blockades of like end the embargo on like Turkish arms purchases. It's a big thing. I think it'll go away.
It's interesting how the constituent members of the Liberal Democratic Alliance, whether in the EU or NATO, increasingly assert their own sovereignty with these authoritarian strongmen. It's almost like liberal democracies fail. Poland, Hungary, Turkey. I mean, what's next?
Yeah, I mean, Russia is definitely not controlled by an authoritarian strongman of all, for sure. What a great
Well,
alternative
Russia's not
there.
a liberal. No, Russia's not a liberal democracy.
Yeah, it's a far right ethno state. Yeah.
It's not an ethno state. It's the opposite of an ethno state.
You're literally making ethnic arguments for Russia to invade other countries. Wait,
No,
that's
I'm
not an
not.
ethno state. What the fuck is? What?
It's not because
Literally ethnic arguments.
Hold on,
They're ethnic
Ossetians-
Russians, so they should be able to invade.
Ossetians are not ethnic Russians. Ossetians are not ethnic Russians.
Sure,
they're Russians.
How many times have you and Jackson
said?
said ethnic Russians in this debate to justify aggression in the
We're
East?
just doing it to illustrate the historical, cultural, and civilizational ties.
No, historical culture and civilization. You can talk about history, culture, and civilization. That's not what you're saying, though. You're saying ethnically
Yeah,
Russian.
no, I'll answer that, Destiny. The only reason why
No, I wasn't asking you, Jackson. I was asking
Okay,
everyone.
well, I'm going to answer it anyways because I feel like
I
it.
see, okay.
The
Who is the
only
question
reason
for?
why, the
Wait,
only
is
reason
he-
why
is this even his question?
the only reason why the ethnic Russian
Okay, I don't
argument.
know why he's answering it.
The only reason why
Donbass
I'm going to answer it one way or another. I will answer it.
Okay, get to that. What's the next?
The only
James? What's the next
you made
question?
a statement and I'm going to respond. The only reason
We have a lot of questions.
he made a statement and I want to respond.
Not to
Can
you,
I
was
not do
talking to
that?
Oz. I'm not talking to you.
Give me like 30
Jackson.
seconds.
Do it,
Give me
Jackson.
30
Go
seconds.
ahead, do it.
The only
I-
okay, I'll answer. The only reason why the ethnic Russian argument is important is because Ukraine is led by a group of anti-ethnic Russian sycophants that want to kill them all, rid them from Ukraine. It's not important to Russia. It's important to the Ukrainian fascists that want to get them out of their country, admittedly.
The fascists who have 1 seat out of 450, got it.
The fascist that was the chair of the Verkhovna Rada, yes, Andriy Parubi.
This one.
Who is now out of power, by the way, for like years.
Jay Grimes
So
says
next
Yeah,
question.
but they still
documentation
control
of
the
the extent of Nazi integration into the Ukraine National Guard includes extensive documentation by WAPO, Vice, and even CNN. Russian propaganda, I presume.
Sure. I mean, of course, there are far right elements, as in with any security structures, and at that point, why advocate seeking them at the Russians, right? Because at that point, you'll stop the imperialist onslaught, and you'll end up with less Nazis in the end.
That's
So-
also what the
Wait a minute.
that's also what the British intelligence wanted to do with Hitler against re-enabling fascism and Nazism historically.
Good thing. Good
The
thing
only
this-
people re-enabling it would be Russia that's attacking
Yeah,
into the
yeah.
country then. And Boletsky left when the Azov Battalion was assumed in 2014 into the military. It's not like they kept their they have this like official far right leadership or whatever. You guys can keep going to try
yeah,
to
he's
find,
the commander. He's the
historically-
commander of the Azov Battalion.
No, he was. He left in 2014
No,
when they were
still,
assumed into the
still,
military.
you can look even at the Kiev Independent. They still quote him as the commander of the Azov Battalion.
The current
He-
commander is like Proko Pensky or some shit. It's not. Boletsky left when they
He-
were assumed into the military.
He literally was in Mariupol.
I don't
he-
know where he is. I don't really care. But I know
He
that
was-
the current leader of the Azov.
The Kiev Independent literally quoted him as such when he made the claim that there was a chemical
The
attack
current
on.
commander is Denis Prokopenko as of 2017 to now, and Boletsky left in 2014. I can quote your own Wikipedia you since you like that as a source so much. Here you go. You can read this out, everybody. There you go. What's the
Still
next
got
question?
those two little
This
scars
one coming in from
right there,
Chris
too. Two
Warlock
little
says
circle
for Adam,
scars.
Did
Same,
Russia
same
send
couple.
50,000 troops to take a
She's got a thing on her
Kiev,
eye,
a
on
city
her
of
right eye,
3.5
and he's got,
million,
on his
pulled
right side, he's got those
5
two scars.
AFU battalions off the Donbass line and allowed for the current situation? 95% of Lugansk
That'd be
under
17.
Russian control.
Can you repeat that question, the first part especially?
Yep, they said, did Russia send 50,000 troops to Kiev, a city of 3.5 million?
Oh yeah, okay, got you. Yeah, so yes, because the Russian plan originally was that the Kiev regime, the Nazi junta or whatever, will collapse, and the Ukrainian troops will lay down their arms in the face of the overwhelming Russian superiority, which of course didn't happen.
You have
Actually,
evidence?
in the first, Sure. Listen to Vladimir Putin, dude. And also in the first few days of the war, we saw Russians essentially charging into Kiev, just like small, disparate operations. Also in Ukrainian uniforms, which is a war crime, by the way. But they get executed. There were multiple attempts at Zelensky's life. So basically, these idiots imagine that the Ukrainian army will just disperse and they're just gonna roll into the city. And
you have evidence that's their plan?
Yes, and have a victory parade on the 9th of May. Actually, funny thing is, in many cars, in many vehicles of the Russians, they found these like parade uniforms. Like these idiots actually thought that they're gonna have the 9th of May parade on like Kreshchatik.
That sounds like something completely.
Whoa, hey, dude, this question was for me. Feel free to answer your question if you get one. So, anyway, this was the plan. Misguided. They had to revise it like 8 times, and now it looks like the Russian army has finally culminated in Severodonetsk, a town of 100,000, which is just embarrassing. So we'll from now on, I think we'll be seeing more and more.
Sounds like they were targeting.
Hey, whoa! Here,
finish.
I'm not done. And after that, we'll be seeing more and more Ukrainian harassment, counterattacks, and Russian attrition. And we'll see. Hopefully, the Russian Empire will collapse.
I'm just curious for Jackson and Haas, give you guys a chance to talk. Can you explain what was the Russian strategy behind sending like so many like unaccompanied APs get like solo destroyed by people with rocket launchers? What was the strategy there?
Plus the 30-mile truck convoy. Don't forget that.
Yeah, can you explain?
I'll first say, Destiny, you are right about Politsky no longer being commander, but I incorrectly quoted the Kiev Independent, who on April 11th said that he was Azov's leader. And they've been known to lie throughout this war, so I quoted them correctly, but they incorrectly reported, I guess is a better way of saying it. As to why Russian military tanks were blown the hell up, I mean, they lost a lot of military personnel. There was multiple times in which Ukrainians, when Russians were trying to enter certain cities, they just blew entire platoons and units up. They slaughtered them. But overall, the military strategy of Russia has been a flow of water approach, where they go where they can go, and if they get stopped by Ukrainians, they don't continue pushing through into the city. Hey, I let you talk, Adam.
Special operation.
I literally let you talk. And yeah, so there was multiple attempts where they tried to go into certain cities and they were blown up and they were slaughtered by the Ukrainians. That's a true thing. They have lost a lot of troops.
There's even instances where they went into cities. So go ahead.
Yeah, but the overall military strategy has proved to be effective because, again, they've controlled far more land than Ukraine has been able to protect. I mean, they've lost virtually every single battle. There's been a few small battles in which Ukraine has won, but the overall large battles, such as in Popasnia, they've lost all these major battles thus far. They've lost Severodonetsk almost entirely, according to Ukrainian officials. They've lost 80% of it. They've already started taking small villages outside Lysychansk, where they're about to encircle 16,000 Ukrainian troops. So, yeah, they may have lost troops, but their strategy has been very effective.
Sure,
and
so
Ukraine is getting.
Russia has said that they have lost, what is this, almost 24,000 people?
What? Show me the evidence. What is your data for that?
Wait, hold on, let me check. I'm trying to look at the casualty.
Also, just to be clear,
These are usually the
oftentimes
estimations
it's
of
reported that
open source
Russia,
intelligence.
oftentimes it's reported that Russia's retreating because of this huge counterattack. Russian soldiers have even pulled back, even at the slightest whiff of the most minimal resistance.
Damn,
That doesn't even, hold on, that doesn't even kill anyone.
second strongest army.
And the reason they do that isn't because they're scared of these people and they're going to lose to them, because they're trying to minimize casualties. So they'll pull back, usually encircle the place for a more long-term strategy. I mean, they could have stormed Azovstal, and they didn't.
So how come they didn't?
Because it wasn't their strategy to take Kiev at that time.
I thought encirclement was anyway. So the real reason for anyone interested is attrition. So if you pull in like guns blazing, no combined arms, just send in the heavy columns. Ukrainians will blow the fuck up with like mobile infantry.
It's because they want to minimize casualties.
Yeah, of course.
Even when Ukrainians have
just like
Mariupol is a passing
ruin. Anyway, so this is called attrition. So basically, you don't defeat an army head on. You essentially
Yes.
It's like a death by
Yes, it is a war of attrition.
Yes, which is what happened in Kiev and Kharkiv. Russians had
No,
to
it's
go back
not.
because unsustainable. Mega
It is without a doubt a war of attrition. Kiev was an example of a faint strategy, but yes, this is a war of attrition, and it's proving quite successful for the Russians.
I mean, the Russians They could have
How
taken
can you-
it
how can you-
small. They could have taken many places, many villages, and they decided not to because they want to minimize casualties on both sides.
I understand it. I just.
okay.
Well, wait, I'm curious. I'm just curious. What would success look like to you in a month?
Oh, they hold
Because, like, if I
20% of
asked you guys a few
Ukraine.
months ago, you would have said that.
That
obviously
looks like
we're gonna be
success.
controlling Kiev.
Military playbook
Russia
before
has
me.
not been transparent about. I've made the mistake of trying to like infer and speculate about what their like plan is. It's not disclosed to the public. It's only disclosed to the actual people in charge of the operation.
But
And
Hinkle,
I'm not going to try and speculate on what what their timetable is or any of that kind of thing.
I will say I'll make a guess. I'll make a guess. Well, no, he asked me a question. I want to respond.
Oh, sure,
I'll
go
make a
ahead.
guess.
That's right.
I wouldn't be surprised if Russia doesn't end the operation until they get Mykolaiv, Zaporizhia, and Odessa.
Okay, so Jackson,
I gotta
don't-
wrap
don't
this up pretty
don't
quick.
Feel, just, one sentence. Jackson, don't feel too bad if you don't have. If
Yeah,
you don't
try to
know
get
the
through the
Russian
sentence without stuttering. Go for it.
Oh, sure. That Jackson charisma, huh? No, just don't feel too bad if you don't have the Russian.
Okay,
military.
good job. You're not
Russia
stuttering
doesn't-
yet.
All right, I got to give him a chance to actually.
Bro, how many languages do you speak, Jackson? Wait, what the fuck? It's this guy's ESL debating you, and you're making fun of him for stuttering? Are you actually retarded? Anytime somebody makes fun of a foreign language speaker, you just speak in your fucking native language.
Did you just call me retarded? That definitely
Ironically,
just
yes.
triggered
Like,
me.
how can you make
That
fun of
just
ESL
really
guy for
triggered
stuttering
me,
in English?
Destiny.
But
My
you-
liberal
I have to-
sensitivities are so offended.
Hold on, to be fair,
My liberal
I think
sensitivities
it's
are
only
so
fair that
offended,
Jackson-
Destiny. I need a safe space, Destiny.
It's only fair that he knows
I love
English because
Jackson.
He's trying to use our country.
I love you,
Like,
Jack
oh,
Bass.
It has nothing. I'm just saying that, like,
I am
if all
so
the things you can
triggered.
make fun of somebody for it, you can't make fun of a multilingual person for being like not quite as quick with your own language. That's like the
He's
dumbest
trying
thing in
to
the world.
use
Make fun
our
of somebody
sons
for.
and daughters.
want to give-
He's trying
all
to-
right,
he's trying to our military.
Okay, our sons and daughters. Okay,
Jackson,
dude.
you asked
He
Adam a
should-
question.
he
I
should
want to
use
give
our
him a
language.
chance to respond without being interrupted.
Oh, that's fine. I think we can go on.
That is it. I promised our guests we're going to get him out of here at a decent time. So,
Oh
folks,
wait, can I
wanna
ask one more question? Then they can respond. Okay, I mean, give them the last
for
word.
short and pithy questions.
Very short. Do you think in 3 months will Russia control more or less territory than it does right now in Ukraine?
Without a doubt, more.
Okay.
Without a doubt. In fact, I think they'll control more by the end of this week.
Yeah, finally, one last thing. I just wanted to end it on this. We couldn't get Adam in on this one, so original that was the tweet modern day debate put out in public. That's it.
The what? Wait, which tweet?
Mom, this female's pregnant. Yeah. That's why she's laying down, taking it easy. She's eating a whole bunch.
Since you guys,
Look, now she's eating your plant.
So
this is what I said.
Look, she's eating the plant on the swing.
She's
a barrel.
Girlfriend, Infrahaz and Jackson Hinkle is still on. I asked Dylan Burns if Adam something could take Dylan's place, and Dylan was open to it because he's burning the wick at both ends. We couldn't get Adam in on this one. In other words, it wasn't that he had already committed and then backed out. He just said it wasn't going to fit with his schedule. So original plan is on. Which
So it wasn't us.
Well, I don't think
Thank you.
anybody backed out. if I
Wait,
remember.
didn't we have an original debate set up with the 4 of us, and then those
Don't you think it's incredible though that Izov something was going out to his YouTube audience and claiming that we backed out when it was in fact a scheduling error on his own part that
Hold on,
prevented him
James,
from
can
participating in
you
the
tell me,
debate?
James,
It's really incredible.
Was there an original debate between all 4
He's a
of us that
Nazi
they backed out
supporter and he's a massive liar.
on? Wait, let James, James.
There was.
It wasn't,
There was.
yeah.
I remember it was something that I think I said came to Jackson.
Second of March.
Came to Jackson and Haas, you guys, and I said, could it be Destiny and Adam? And then had a hate boner for Dylan. Infrared said, no, Dylan has to be in it. He said, Dylan can't be a co-host.
Yes.
I reject that debate.
Oh, okay.
No. All I said yes to the debate with Adam something, no to the Dylan as a. Why would Dylan co-host? He's not
Exactly.
debating.
Okay, that's fine. But you guys, so you had a reason, but you did back out of the first place. That's all.
No,
We
but
did.
then
Like
Adam was
modern-day debate
Adam
said
was
we
ready. Adam was ready to debate, and then he said he couldn't because of a scheduling conflict.
Yeah.
Well, no, that sounds like a second debate that was never agreed on.
That what?
No, it
How's that a
doesn't.
second debate if we just said we didn't want Dylan Burns to be the co-host?
Yeah. Why
That's
would
the
we
same
do
exact
a
debate. We just said we didn't want Dylan to be a co-host.
neutral. Why would we want Dylan Burns?
I really don't think anybody backed out. I want to say, folks, all of our guests are linked in the description. If you'd like to learn more about their views, we highly encourage you. We really do appreciate our guests, and I will put up that charity receipt as 100% of the super chats from tonight's debate will be going to the Domestic Action Center. And so, Thank you very much.
A
That
great
receipt for that
debate.
donation will be up on the social tab on our YouTube channel within the next 48 hours. Thank you to our guests, though. It's been a true pleasure to have you guys.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a good debate.
It's been
With
great.
that,
Thank
I'll be
you.
back in just a moment with a post-credit scene letting you know about upcoming debates. With that, stick around. Thanks so much, folks.
Yep. Bye bye.
Thanks, guys.
That was great.
Sniveling little fucking Nazi supporter. Sniveling Nazi supporter. Well, that was the most one-sided debate I've ever been
He's
a part
got
of.
200
usually
people
prepare
watching.
quite a bit for my debates. Like, I usually do a lot of preparation. I did no preparation. In fact, last night
A party.
I had a very fun night, and I woke up and very late.
I went out and partied.
And I did like no preparation for that, and we still eviscerated the sniveling Azov supporting, Bandera supporting Nazi supporter, and the political video gamer Destiny. That was the most one-sided debate I've ever been a part of. I almost felt bad for them a little bit because of how one-sided that debate was. What does that bring my tally to of victories in debates? I don't lose debates. Like,
Two,
I don't
for
see
sure.
how any objective viewer could look at that. Jackson has lost. It's like we put up so much evidence, and they would just be like, well, we either think that the evidence doesn't matter or that that's just Russian propaganda. Or how about the part where the constitutional law in Ukraine doesn't matter? I guarantee you, if there was some violation of like Ukrainian law as a result of like Viktor Yanukovych, they would defend Ukrainian law to the end of the earth. But when it's a U.S.-backed coup regime of fascists and Nazis who are the ones violating the constitutional law, they're like, it doesn't matter. It's a popular revolution. It's like the Bolsheviks, right? It's just like the Bolsheviks. They got bodied. And the chat was, I mean, holy shit. That was bad for them. I kind of feel a little bit bad for them. That was bad. I do not think that Azov something will be uploading that to his own YouTube. That would probably be very embarrassing for him. That was probably the most one-sided debate I've ever been a part of. That was more one-sided than my Sam Cedar debate. That was more one-sided than my Vosh debate. That was more one-sided than my last debate with Destiny. That was without a doubt the most one-sided debate. And I thought we did a really good job of presenting the information. And I also felt like they were on the defense the entire time. Like, not because we were like over-talking. I just think that like we had the arguments that were very strong. Therefore, they were constantly having to like make up these conspiracy theories as they were like stuttering and sniveling throughout their defending of Azov, Nazis and Stefan Bandera. Let me just show you what Azov something said, because if you don't believe me that he is a Azov defender and a Bandera defender, I can show you this right. So here's a video of him defending the Azov battalion. This is from one of his own viewers. Adam, something is seriously one of the dumbest people on YouTube literally defending support for the Azov battalion.
So the Ukrainian military was in shambles as a war was going on in the east, fueled by Russia. In response, the Ukrainian government turned to the ultranationalists to help beat back the enemy. Then the Ministry of Interior made the Azov battalion officially part of the National Guard. And my question here is, what else was the Ukrainian government was supposed to do? The country was falling apart, the separatists were spreading westward, their military was in shambles, and among the few forces you did have to betray you for Russia. Then comes a group of highly motivated ultranationalists with weapons training, whose entire worldview is predicated on fighting Russian invaders, and whose allegiance is unquestionably with Ukraine. And they tell you, give us weapons and support and we'll get shit done. What decision maker would say no to that? Even if you wouldn't sending them to war mean many of them would die? That would be a win-win, right?
Pause. The far righters. So the Azov is no longer Nazi. They're just far righters. Okay, got it.
You help halt the Russian offensives, and you end up with less ultranationalists in the end. Integrated into the National Guard is because they did get the job done. They were effective, had high morale, and could be trusted to not switch sides. So the Ukrainian military was in shambles as a war was going on in the east, fueled by Russia. In response, the Ukrainian government turned to the ultranationalists to help beat back the enemy. Then the Ministry of Interior made the Azov battalion officially part of the National Guard. And my question here is, what else was the Ukrainian government was supposed to do?
What else was the Ukrainian government supposed to do? Yes, I'm sure that's exactly what so many, SS members said
Get into
during
bed
the
with Nazis.
Nuremberg tribunals. What else was I supposed to do? I don't know. What else was I supposed to do? They were promising us liberation and a free Ukraine. Slava Zucchini.
All right, you
Stefan
guys, I
Bandera
hope you
said
had fun.
If we just issued
Hope you
the
enjoyed this
summonses, if we
2-hour
just
show.
slaughtered a few hundred
Thanks.
thousand.
Shouts out to Jackson Hinkle and everybody that participated in that debate. It was fantastic, and those owned by Jackson. I hope you guys had fun. Nick says keep it open. Okay. You guys are fantastic. I love you guys. I'll see you tomorrow. All right. Take care, guys.